Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. This caused the female warrior who had rushed in to quickly stop, take a deep breathing, and kneel on one knee. Snake Princess, 3 marine warships have appeared on the sea and are heading towards us. A sound of surprise and doubt rang out, and then the curtain was pulled open. Out walked a blue-haired woman over 2 meters in height, wearing only black and yellow iron underwear and with a layer of white gauze wrapped around her feet as shoes. This woman's almost naked body was filled with bronzed muscle. A high nose bridge, a cold and beautiful face. However, only one of her sharp, azure pupils remained. Her right eye was covered by a black eye patch decorated with small skeletons. She was the current emperor of the Amazon Lily Kingdom, a woman called strong by her citizens, Cylia. As this empress moved, a large python gleaming with dark light also slithered out from behind her, staring coldly at the small warrior below the platform. The Marines actually dared to trespass into the comm belt, and they really arrived here successfully. Cylia had the feeling that the situation was tricky. What she worried about wasn't the 3 warships in front of her, but the continuous marine fleet behind them. Immediately mobilize all warriors. Yes. Soon, a series of clanging alarm bells rang throughout Amazon Lily, causing many women busy with housework to pick up their weapons, bows, and arrows and hurry towards the port. It can be said that all adult females on the island possess excellent combat ability. Snake Princess, you must remain calm. Before the other side attacks, you absolutely must not strike first. Just as the current empress was heading out of the island with the steel saber in her hand, accompanied by the black snake, a short old woman less than 1.5 meters tall, leaning on a cane formed by a purple snake, ran over and quickly reminded her. Granny Salome, they've come knocking on our door. How can we just passively stand by? Of course, we should strike first to be strong. Cylia stopped and asked with dissatisfaction. The Marines aren't necessarily here to fight us. If that were the case, it wouldn't just be 3 warships. Gloriosa, who was called Granny Salome, gave a quick explanation. She was the empress of the previous 3 generations of this country, and she understood the outside world situation better. To this day, she still insists on follow-up reads of the latest World Economic Journal. So she clearly understood the recent changes in the world government. You mean they are here to talk? Yes. Cylia nodded thoughtfully and said. Then let's meet them first and see what they have to say. Immediately, she took large strides again, leading the increasingly numerous Kuja female warriors, and headed towards the port with imposing aura. This also made Gloriosa breathe a sigh of relief. She truly didn't want Amazon Lily to have a major conflict with Marine headquarters, or even the world government. Soon. With Amazon Lily intentionally allowing it, the 3 Marine warships approached smoothly. 2 of the warships anchored in the distance, while the warship carrying Vice Admiral Gomail and Rear Admiral Momunga slowly sailed to the dock. However, as soon as the 2 of them and dozens of Marines stepped off the ship, they were targeted by dense boats and arrows, and the arrowheads emitted a chilling hockey. Seeing this scene, although Gomail and Momunga's faces remained unchanged, they were surprised by the widespread use of hockey in this kingdom. Marines, what are you doing here? The current empress, Cylia, holding the large steel saber comparable to a bench, walked up to the 2 of them and questioned them with an expressionless face. Seeing this, Vice Admiral Gomail took a step forward, ignoring the glimmering arrowheads, and spoke with a serious expression as he looked at the other party. We are here to announce the latest law of the world government. From now on, all kingdoms and islands in the entire world must automatically become members of the affiliated countries, including your Amazon Lily Kingdom. Therefore, your country's army must no longer appear under the name of a pirate crew, and must abide by the relevant laws of the world government. In return, your country can have a qualification seat to participate in the reverie. These 2 solemn and formal announcements caused the atmosphere in the court where the 2 sides were confronting each other to solidify. No one on the Kuja side expected the Marines to be here for this. Even Cylia, who was always strong, showed a hesitant expression. Meanwhile, Gloriosa behind her immediately showed a look of surprise and delight on her face. She quickly nudged the former's thigh and urged in a low voice. Quickly agree. This is a great thing. If we disband the pirate crew, what will we eat? What will we drink? What will we wear? What will we use? Silea asked angrily, placing her left hand on her hip. This country has very little agricultural land and few handicraft products. Most of their food and daily necessities come from the Kuja pirates plundering outside, occasionally hunting a few sea kings to serve as meat. This. Gloriosa was also speechless and could only turn her gaze towards Vice Admiral Gomail. The latter smiled slightly, displaying his optimistic and cheerfully characteristics. After becoming an affiliated country, the world government will dispatch economists from the Ministry of Finance to plan and support suitable economic industries for your country. At the same time, the world government will also purchase the sea kings your country hunts in the future. Everyone can use this income to go to other islands to purchase needed supplies. Of course, if your country is willing to let your warriors join the army under the world government, you will also receive corresponding subsidies based on the number of people, just like how we Marines welcome everyone. Next, Gomail and Silea discussed the details and questions in front of everyone. Although the entire process was slightly lengthy, the citizens of Kuja listened attentively, as this concerned their future lives. Alright, I agree. Silea thought carefully for a while, then discussed with Gloriosa behind her for a bit, and realized there wasn't really much of a choice. If they didn't agree, they would inevitably be facing more marine encirclement and suppression. She didn't believe the world government was that kind. May I ask, how did you pass through the Com Belt? Oh, that's because our Academy of Science did research on how to use sea stone. Vice Admiral Gomail didn't hide anything and gave a brief introduction to these matters. The Kuja side immediately fell silent after hearing this. It seemed the Com Belt could no longer truly serve as a natural barrier in the future. Just then, they heard Vice Admiral Gomail ask with a smile. Besides that, we have also brought a special gift. May I ask if your country has a little girl named Boa Hancock, who is around 6 or 7 years old this year? At the same time, Rear Admiral Momunga behind him took out a square wooden box, which caused Silea and the others to show puzzled expressions. Some women who knew Hancock felt even stranger, but how could they know that Vice Admiral Gomail also knew nothing and was just completing the mission given from above? Chapter 269, Whitebeard's Unexpected Attack. How big is Noah's Ark? This was a question that One Piece fans from his previous life had always talked about with great relish, and now Em knew the answer. Noah's Ark is divided into 2 levels, the deck and the ship tower. The cross-sectional area of the ship tower is roughly half that of the deck. According to the technician's calculations, the area of the deck is 21 square kilometers, and the area of each floor of the ship tower is 10 square kilometers. What kind of concept is this? It's equivalent to 15,000 mu of land, equivalent to 100,100 square meter houses, and has a diameter of 3.5 kilometers. To be honest, such a large space would definitely be too empty for him to live in alone. Fortunately, there were a large number of maids, chefs, doctors, and guards to fill it, so it didn't seem too deserted. But even so, nearly 80% of the rooms within the entire ship were empty. In contrast, Im was very satisfied with the facilities on his level. Centered around a pool and fountain comparable to a lake, there were palaces scattered at different heights. The ground was covered with red line. There was a sea of gold and red flowers, clear winding rivers, layered rock gardens, lush green lawns, elegant bamboo forests, lifelike sculptures, and pavilions and towers with carved beams and painted pillars. This was coupled with the brilliant sunlight filtering down from above through the crystal barrier. It must be said that the people from the construction department truly embodied the words magnificent and opulent to the fullest. Compared to the star-sea silver earth within the room of authority, he definitely preferred this relatively modern environment. The former was more like a secret realm where deities resided. Lord Amu, the Amazon Lily Kingdom has agreed to affiliation and has agreed to hand over the armament hockey training secret method and dispatch warriors to join the land and sea forces to teach archery. At this moment, Im wore a loose, pure white robe and was half reclining on a chair, facing the huge fountain that seemed to spray upwards like a waterfall. The feeling of the warm sunlight and the cool water vapor washing over him made him enjoy closing his eyes to rest, but his ears were listening to the respectfully delivered report from the golden den mushi placed on a platinum lead tray by a maid. We are preparing to select some suitable candidates from them to be your bodyguards. Do you have any requirements? Im opened his eyes, very interested in this suggestion from the 5 elders. Although he hadn't seen the Kuja warriors with his own eyes yet, he could imagine them through his past life memory. Bikinis, capes, longboats, snakes, their appearances were varied and strange, and not many could be called very beautiful. However, Having a group of heroic and skilled female warriors who were good at archery around him was indeed quite interesting. Since it's Amazon Lily, select 9 people. Their height should preferably be above 1.8 meters, around 2 meters. When it came to women, he still preferred those whose body size wasn't too outrageous, like Stussy next to him, who was just right. Understood, Lord Amu. Saint Topman Warcurry on the other end of the transponder snail first replied respectfully, then said. Also, the Paramsha system love fruit has been confirmed to have been eaten by Boa Hancock. Should she be brought to your side? No need. Let her grow up on Amazon Lily. Just have Cypher Paul send someone to teach her martial arts. Im thought about it and decided against it. Firstly, he really had no interest in raising a young girl. Secondly, he felt that if she left the atmosphere of Amazon Lily, where strength was considered beauty, Hancock's arrogant personality would likely change significantly, which would be boring. Of course, without the experience of being a slave, she might not be as extremely arrogant as in the canon. He wondered if this was good or bad. Okay, Lord Amu. After finishing the matter regarding Amazon Lily, the transponder snail did not seem to intend to end the call and continued to report. Our undercover agent in the Whitebeard Pirates has sent back news. Because Izo received a distress call from the Kazuki retainer Kikunojo, Whitebeard has decided to head to Wano country. This intelligence was quite significant. Im straightened up, his gaze becoming serious. A powerful aura emanated from him, causing Stussy and the maid to feel suffocated. Stussy was fine, but the maid's hand holding the tray trembled slightly. He actually didn't want the world government and the Whitebeard Pirates to have a direct conflict too early. There were so many things everyone was busy with right now, there was no need to trigger a major war. But he hadn't expected Wano country to unexpectedly attract the Whitebeard Pirates. In that case, this conflict was unavoidable, because the world government couldn't give up the meat they had just eaten. However, it was very strange. Why did Whitebeard suddenly get involved in Wano country's affairs? In the canon, even when Kazuki Oden was killed by Kaido, he didn't seem to make a move. Im secretly pondered in his heart. Something must have gone wrong, attracting Edward Newgate's attention. That's right. It was the appearance of Bandai World and Kaido that made him realize the world government had interfered in Wano country. The former was captured and frozen in Impel Down 6 years ago, and the latter also successfully went to prison a few months ago. Now, these two suddenly getting out of prison and teaming up to deal with Kazuki Oden made it easy to guess that it was related to the world government. If Kazuki Oden had just died at Kaido's hands, it would only be considered a matter between pirates, and Whitebeard naturally wouldn't interfere much. But if it involved the world government, that was a different nature. Lord Amu, Wano country currently has no highest combat power station there, making it difficult to resist the Whitebeard Pirates' invasion. The transponder snail said with a serious expression. What are you planning to do? Dispatch Army Generals Black Rhino and Akainu to lead 5 warships to support Wano country. Hearing this suggestion, Im frowned. Black Rhino was Bandai World's Admiral epithet, but the question was whether he could block Whitebeard, and even if he could, how long could he block him? No matter how you looked at it, he could at most hold on for 12 hours. As for Sakazuki, there was even less to say, he could at most help block the captains. Notify the Marines to dispatch Admiral Iron Fist to lead 5 flying warships to Wano country at full speed. Im immediately issued the order. Yes, Lord Amu. Saint Topman Warcurry quickly agreed. However, doing so would leave Marine headquarters without an admiral station there, which did not comply with the Marines' usual rules. But Garp was definitely much more reliable than Bandai World. Just. Seeing the transponder snail show a hesitant expression, Im said coldly with displeasure. Speak your mind. Yes, it's just that from Manaford to Wano country, even with flying warships, it's unlikely they can arrive in time. Saint Topman Warcurry said with distress. After hearing this, Im secretly nodded in his heart. This was indeed a big problem. Notify Mihawk and allow them to temporarily withdraw from Wano country. With flying warships, there would definitely be no problem for Mihawk and the others to escape. He clearly remembered the saying, if the people survive, the land is lost. If both people and land survive, if the people are lost, the land survives, if both people and land are lost. Yes, I'll go do it now. With a click, the transponder snail closed its eyes. The maid, trembling with fear, slowly left with the tray. Im quietly watched the blue sky and white clouds above. In his heart, he actually liked Edward Newgate. If possible, he didn't want to kill him and hoped to see Whitebeard on the Myriad Worlds battlefield in the future. But if, in the end, this world's strongest man was unwilling to submit, then he could only personally extinguish this lamp that appeared extremely bright even when placed in the river of history spanning over 800 years. Chapter 270, Army Admiral Candidate, Ghost Shark. Just as the Supreme Political Conference concluded, and the world government was busy with numerous matters such as development of resources in the Kabinari world, establishing the Other World Strategy Committee, constructing Stargate Base Number 0002 on RL 1557, and transferring Marine Officer to Army Headquarters. The Whitebeard pirates heading to Wano country truly surprised everyone. The Seastone Mine, Sake Ironstone Mine, famous sword forging technology, seastone processing technology, and historical significance held immense value for the world government. Not to mention, Dracul Mihawk, that noble world noble, was also there. Crucially, both the Marines and the Army were in a transitional phase regarding their highest combat power. Sakazuki, Borsellino, Kuzn, Bullet, and even Kaido were currently only at the Admiral candidate level. Burndai World and Shinjawa, who had recovered his drill head, could also be considered highest combat power, but one was a short-term burst type, and the other was a special type strong in a certain aspect. They could handle general highest combat power, but against someone like Edward Newgate, they could only hold out for a while and then retreat safely. To be stationed in Wano country and confront the opponent for a long time was truly impossible. Therefore, only Garp could be dispatched. But the distance was truly far, and Whitebeard was too close to Wano country. Coupled with having been there once before, they were even more familiar with the route. In this time difference, aside from having Mihawk and the others temporarily withdraw from Wano country, there was truly no other way. However, it would still take some time for the matter in Wano country to erupt. After all, even the Whitebeard pirates would need a day or two to reach Wano country, and the world government's attention couldn't stay focused there indefinitely. This day, a group of officers wearing white justice coats stepped out of several black luxury cars and appeared before the gates of Justice of Army Headquarters, named Landiforce, located on RL 1555 on the Red Line. I never thought that one day I would leave the Marines and come to this army. Dalmatian, with his full golden beard, looked at the hundreds of meters high steel gate before him and sighed with emotion. Doberman, standing beside him, touched the itchy scar on his face and said expressionlessly, "We are soldier. We just need to obey order. Besides, joining the army means we can go to the other world for conquest sooner. I think it's quite good. I'm here because Sakazuki is here." At this moment, a fierce-looking, black-haired strong man wearing a red-tasseled helmet coldly interjected. Just his presence made the people around him instinctively step back a few paces. "You really are a KNU's #1 fan," Onigamo Dalmatian chuckled lightly. Humphrey. Onigamo didn't deny it, but not far from him, Shiryu looked over in disbelief, thinking, does that kind of pervert have admirers too? Shiryu only felt incredibly unlucky now. Ever since Sakazuki was transferred to the army, he had started leading teams alone, enjoying the fresh air called freedom. Although due to excessive slaughter, he occasionally accidentally injured his own people or innocent civilian, and frequently received condemning phone calls personally from Fleet Admiral Sengoku. But he was still very satisfied with his Marine's life. After all, he could kill people openly and legitimately. But who would have thought such happy days would be so short? In just a few months, he was kicked back to Sakazuki's side, and even became his adjutant. He heard it was personally approved by Fleet Admiral Sengoku, and he was the only Marine officer among those present who was actively sent away. However, joining the army to participate in otherworld conquest would definitely allow him to kill more people, and since they were otherworlder, he probably wouldn't be managed so strictly. Shiryu could only comfort himself in this way at this time. There were a total of 41 Marine officers transferred to Army headquarters by the Supreme Military Command this time. That's right, Shiryu was the extra one. This included 3 Vice Admiral, 5 Rear Admiral, 8 Commodore, and 25 Marine headquarters officer of various ranks. Among the 5 Rear Admiral, 1 was a minor character, while the other 4 were the future Vice Admiral Doberman, Onigamo, Dalmatian, and Stainless. Adding the previous giant unit, it could be said that Marine headquarters had suffered a significant loss. But the rise of the army was already the major trend for the world government. The Marines could only grit their teeth and endure the painful cut, all because the Stargate was too small for warship to enter. Not to mention, when the Air Force is established, another Kizaru will have to leave. Several hours later, just as the sunset in the sky was about to fall from the edge of the Red Line, Shiryu and the others had taken off their white justice coat and changed into black justice coat. They were then taken to the #1 Stargate base located in Area RL 1556. Because they were about to personally go to the Kabinari world to experience the air of another world, and even have the chance to personally kill a few Kabinari world. This was Marshal Raymond's intention. It was mainly to allow these elite officers to get used to the existence of other world, so that when conquering the next other world, they wouldn't have mindset problems like being overly surprised. The entire process went smoothly. After going through the complete disinfection process at the biochemical safety station, 41 Army officers with strong aura, dressed in suit, swung their black justice coat and walked into the Stargate one by one, their eyes full of curiosity. However, the imagined scene of sudden openness and a strange other world appearing before their eyes after passing through did not occur. Instead, it was a white metal passage identical to the biochemical safety station behind them. After several more disinfection process, when the last electric gate opened, a noisy environment filled with people coming and going and the roar of motorcycle immediately came into view. But nothing was as attention-grabbing as the giant standing not far away. It was a super muscle man in a black military uniform, with a full head of shoulder-length golden curly hair, nearly 5 meters tall, and a neck thicker than his head. Douglas Bullitt. Sure you, Onigamo, and others recognized him at a glance. After all, Bullitt had stayed with the Roger Pirates for a few years, and everyone present had previously been officers at Marine headquarters, so they had at least seen his wanted poster. But he was no longer a pirate. He was now an Army Lieutenant General, code name Ghost Shark, and an Army Admiral candidate. After all, he had not only trained batch after batch of qualified soldiers for Army headquarters, but his own strength had indeed reached this level. It's worth mentioning that Sir Crocodile was still just a regular Vice Admiral. Who I am, I assume needs no introduction. As for who you are, I will get to know the outstanding ones among you slowly in the future, so there's no need to waste time here. For the next few days, you will follow the recruit to clear Kabinari world in the wild. If you are an ability user, you can experience the feeling of swimming in the sea. After speaking, Douglas Bullitt turned and left. Onigamo, Doberman, and the others exchanged glances and followed without saying much, while also observing the environment of the entire base. After watching for a while, they were somewhat disappointed. The ground was paved with marble, the ceiling was white metal, and stone houses were everywhere. There was no sign of any other world scenery at all. However, when they walked out of the steel gate of the Stargate base and personally saw the Loess beneath their feet and the blue sky above their heads, their original disappointment became even greater. Too ordinary. Is this the other world? It just feels like we passed through a gate from the red line to a regular small island. Someone in the team complained in a low voice. At this moment, Douglas Bullitt walked to his large heavy motorcycle, turned his head, and said to them. Those who can ride a motorcycle, get on. Those who can't, follow by running. Chapter 271, Are Devil Fruits Useful? Rumble rumble rumble, 41 black heavy motorcycles, led by a special motorcycle as large as a car, sped across the wilderness like lightning and thunder, carrying a group of Army officers. The strong wind blowing in their faces hit their bodies, blowing their black justice coats straight out behind them in midair. Sure you, Doberman, Onigamo, and others rode on the motorcycles, leaning low, listening to the thunderous roar and the whistling of the strong wind pulling at their clothing, and thinking that they were in another world, couldn't help but feel hot blood surge in their hearts. Although the environment of this other world was a bit too ordinary. Not long after leaving the Stargate base gate, they found many construction sites on both sides of the road. Some were cutting down trees, some were transporting stone materials, and some were excavating the ground. Judging from some of the already built zones, it seemed they were constructing buildings of various sizes. A few minutes later, everyone saw an extremely long stone wall appear in the distance that seemed to have no end, as if it was cutting the entire ground in half. Actually, what Sure you and the others thought was not wrong. The world government had already decided to make the Ojeka Peninsula the headquarters urban area in the Kabinari world, so they used this stone wall to enclose the entire peninsula. And named it the Wall of the World. Above the nearly 100-meter-high steel city gate was printed a huge world government emblem. The meaning was that passing through this great wall was entering a new world, whether coming in or going out. For this, more than 3,000 native workers were directly mobilized, over 1,000 large-scale project vehicles that were disassembled and then reassembled, as well as the senior architect Pika from the construction department. In addition to this, on the city wall were Army soldiers holding automatic rifles, standing tall and proud at their posts. Beside them were rows of dark large-caliber cannons, and beside the cannons were planted world government flags. The heavy motorcycle team, under the gaze of many soldiers, grandly rushed out of the wide and flat city gate. What is this? Just as everyone exited the somewhat dark gate opening, their attention was immediately drawn to a large area of gray-black ground not far away. The contrast in color between them and the yellowish-brown ground beneath them was simply too great. Onigamo, while driving his motorcycle, said hesitantly. It looks like magma rock? But there doesn't seem to be a volcano here. Hearing his reminder, Doberman and the others also noticed that the gray-black rock blocks were indeed covered in many pores and were also uneven and pitted, with holes of various sizes everywhere, as if a fierce battle had once taken place there. Less nonsense, Keep your mouths shut while we're on the road." Just as they were discussing back and forth, Douglas Barrett, who was leading the way at the front, suddenly turned his head and glared angrily. This made many people pause, not understanding why this person suddenly got angry, but someone immediately thought of something, and the corners of their mouths curled up meaningfully. But fortunately, the strength of this ghost shark vice admiral was enough to keep them in check, so no one saw trouble by speaking up to mock him. After leaving the inexplicable magma rock zone, about 10 minutes later, the team arrived at a very lively place. Hundreds of large trucks were parked in the zones on both sides of the main road, seemingly waiting for something, and there were also many army soldiers guarding various places around. When everyone followed Bullet to the parking spaces specifically for motorcycles, a series of whistle sounds echoed throughout the entire station. A few minutes later, as a white iron armored train pulled into the station, many workers who had been waiting for a long time walked up and, working with the people on the train cars, lifted down large boxes one by one and then together transported them onto the trucks. When a truck was full, it drove directly onto the main road. Not long after, in front of Shiryu and the others, a long line formed by fully loaded heavy trucks appeared, heading towards the direction they had just come from with a great clamor of vehicles. This is Osaka Station. It is a train station recently built by the world government. It has 8 railways leading to various places in Hinamoto, mainly used for transporting natural resources, manpower, troops, and equipment, and it is one of the main targets our army must protect in this world. Douglas Barrett led them quickly towards the interior of the station, while introducing the situation here in a deep voice. The army soldiers along the way, as soon as they saw so many Code of Justice surging in, all stopped in their tracks and gave the most standard military salute. Next, we will take a train carrying people to the southernmost Kyushu, because only there in this country are there still large numbers of Kabanrai world rampaging, and from time to time, some natives hiding in the deep mountains and old forests, attempting to resist, attack us. You all be careful. Although most of the Joint Suppression Army were massacred before, a portion still managed to escape alive. They gathered a group of conservative faction members and, using Hinamoto's mountainous environment, began to wage guerrilla warfare, and indeed caused quite a few small troubles. Fortunately, with the large arrival of Cypher Pal members, they took over the mission of clearing out these mountain rats. It is said to be for the rookies who just graduated from Kona Island to practice. Next, the 41 officers transferred from the Marines sat on a normal train with windows, modified after removing the iron armor, quickly traveling across the land of the otherworld country along the long railways. During this process, they passed through Kurokawa Station, Sentai Station, and only stopped when they reached a place called Kongakaku, because the train needed to replenish fresh water, food, and undergo maintenance. This is the capital of this country. The leader is not called a king, but is referred to as a general. She's a yellow-haired girl not yet 20 years old. Next, you have 5 hours of free time. I will not wait for latecomers. At that time, roll yourselves back to the homeland. Onigamo, Doberman, Shiryu, and others walked out of the train car, surveying this station which clearly looked larger in scale and more luxurious in decoration than Osaka Station. Yes. After hearing Bullet's words, they all straightened their chests and saluted, and then walked out of the station in 2s and 3s with the flow of people. Wow, not bad. Are those the otherworlders? They look like they're not much different from us. Because the station's terrain was higher than the urban area, a colonel could overlook the large areas of wooden houses and wooden buildings below and the dense men, women, old and young walking on the streets. It's just that their clothing looks a bit ancient, and their height is quite short. But after wandering for 1 or 2 hours, Shiryu and the others felt bored. Except for the ancient-looking pavilions with green-tiled roofs which gave them some novelty, there was really nothing else to see. In terms of food, they tasted some grilled chicken skewers and tamagoyaki and felt they were just average. After all, the cafeteria at Marine Headquarters could provide all the delicious food from world nations. No matter what you wanted to eat, they could make it fresh for you. The ingredient choices were also richer, and even the meat of sea kings was served at the table. However, the citizens here, as well as the gun-wielding soldiers patrolling by, looked at them with respectful gazes. Their appearance of awe and worship was not concealed in the slightest, even making people feel it was a bit exaggerated. Because everyone in Konigakaku already understood that these people wearing coats with the word justice written on them belonged to the high-ranking officers of the world government, and it was said that each one of them possessed terrifying strength capable of holding off 100. Just as these 41 officers were walking around inside the city casually, Yatsugawa Iomu inside the Shogun Castle also received the news. Keep a close eye on them, don't let anyone have a conflict with them. Yes, General. As the samurai who came to report retreated, this young, dignified, and beautiful new female shogun sat properly on the shogun's seat on the high platform and murmured thoughtfully. Just how many more military officers like this do they have? Yatsugawa Ayame's feelings towards the world government were complex. She had long known that the latter was hauling away her country's gold, copper ore, iron mine, and timber by the truckload, and also knew that large numbers of opponents were being slaughtered every day. She even knew that the world government was preparing to build schools to teach the writing of their world, and was also preparing to change the entire country's currency to paper money called berry. And she herself had completely become a puppet shogun who could only govern by following orders. But correspondingly, also because the world government made the Kabanrai world completely disappear in most areas, they no longer had to constantly face the threat of death. It also allowed many stations, including Kongakaku, to start letting citizens cultivate farmland outside the fortress. Everyone's living space immediately widened several times. Coupled with the various living supplies transported from time to time, it also made hot rice and fragrant meat appear on the dining tables of every household. She had to admit, the lives of the citizens had never been so happy. Do you think our decision was right? How will our descendants view us in the future? Yatsugawa Ayame raised her beautiful eyes to look at Kurisa standing beside her. This former samurai guard of hers was now the shogunate's highest military officer and also her newlywed husband. Don't think too much. We simply cannot resist. Let future matters be as they will. Kurisu, wearing a deep blue high-ranking samurai attire, lowered himself and put his arm around her shoulder to comfort her. That's true. Yatsugawa Ayame shook head, finally revealing a lovely smile. I wonder how Akama, Hazumi, and Mekko are doing on Planet C. They'll be fine. After all, they are new among the Kabanrai. I believe they can live well no matter where they are. Kurisa stand up and said with emotion. Actually, sometimes, I've also thought about becoming a Kabanrai. Why? Because I am too weak. The current me simply doesn't have the strength to protect you. Kurisa gazed at Ayame affectionately. In his heart, he actually still held a certain degree of vigilance towards the world government. And as a samurai with exquisite swordsmanship, after witnessing the combat power of those army soldiers, he would definitely yearn for stronger strength. At least, he hoped he could have the ability, no matter what matters occurred, to take Ayame and escape Kongakaku. But reality was cruel. As people from the Kabanrai world, their physique was inherently much weaker than that of C-star person. There was simply no possibility of mastering extraordinary swordsmanship or martial arts. Yatsugawa Ayame actually knew about these things as well, so she used her identity as the general and specifically asked Senior Director O'Connor. I heard that in the C-star world, there's a devil fruit that can give people divine-like strength just by eating it. That god of sand is a devil fruit user. Hearing his wife's words, Kurisa looked at her in surprise. There's such a magical thing? Then you mean? Yatsugawa Ayame smiled slightly. I want to ask Senior Director O'Connor to see if I can get a devil fruit. I just don't know if this thing is useful for people from our world. Chapter 272, Big Mom Attacks? Just as Hinamoto in the Kabanrai world was changing with each passing day under the influence of the world government, Wano country on C-star mainland, which had a similar art style, began to experience turmoil. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Don't worry about the overly heavy equipment. If it's destroyed, we can just transport it over later. The citizens of Flower Capital, either hiding indoors or standing on the sides of the street, watched curiously as these outsiders, who had only arrived a few days ago, rushed towards the floating warship hovering in the distance. Because the smoke and dust they kicked up made the environment hazy and polluted, forcing people to cover their mouths and noses with their sleeves, their confusion grew even deeper. Could Kaido have attacked again? No way. Wasn't Kaido driven away by those warships before? Then what are they afraid of? I don't know, but it looks like they're leaving. That's a good thing, but the general doesn't know how to choose. The discussions of these people did not affect the pace of the world government personnel in the slightest. I never expected that we would have to leave so quickly, with our tails between our legs. Mihawk walked out of the former Orochi Castle, now renamed Shogun Castle, and stood on a tree trunk dozens of meters wide, walking expressionlessly towards the floating warship waiting for him nearby. Jian, who was behind him, heard the unwillingness and anger in his heart and gently comforted him. It's Whitebeard who's coming, after all. Once Admiral Garp arrives, we can still come back. I truly hope that one day I can personally spar with Whitebeard. Mihawk touched Blackblade, Yaro on his back. At this moment, he was eager to break through to the great swordsman level as soon as possible. After boarding the warship, he turned to Senior Director Bayer beside him and asked, how is the personnel assembly going? Most of the people near Flower Capital have already boarded the ship, but Udon and Ringo seem to need a few more hours. Senior Director Bayer replied softly. Mihawk nodded in understanding. Tell them to hurry up, but try to bring those swordsmiths with you. Yes. The former received the order and quickly went to relay it. Ever since they took control of Wano country, the administrative staff and technicians who came with the ship, escorted by a large number of marines, were dispersed to various villages and towns. Among them, Udon, the main concentration area for Seastone Mine, and Ringo, which housed a large number of Mto, became the two most important targets. Especially Udon. It gathered the most excellent swordsmiths, many of whom possessed exquisite craftsmanship for forging various sharp swords that had been passed down for hundreds of years, or the technology for processing seastone products. There was also Kibi. According to Fukurokaju's introduction, the ninja training base was hidden among some secret hills, so naturally, administrative staff also went there to investigate. Thus, gathering everyone back would certainly not be an easy matter. Swish swish swish, just then, after images appeared on the deck. Mihawk and Giant turned around and saw Fukurokaju leading the Mimowarigmi. They were also bringing 3 people, 1 man and 2 women, handcuffed with seastone handcuffs. General Sama, they are Kazuki retainer Kikunojo, Kinemon, and the rogue ninja Shinobu. Where are the rest? Mihawk's sharp gaze swept over the 3 who were glaring at him with gritted teeth. Denjiro, Ashuradoji, and Kawamatsu jumped into the river and disappeared. Fukurokaju and the others said shamefully, kneeling on the ground. So all of this was planned by you overseas people. That burned eye world is also one of yours, right? You killed Lord Odin. You despicable villains who stole the country, you will be overthrown by those who come after you sooner or later. Kinemon roared furiously, struggling with all his might while cursing wildly. They had already communicated with Izo through Kikunojo's transponder snail and understood what the world government and marines were. Whether it was Kaido or Burned Eye World, they were actually subordinates of these guys. They were no different from the Kurizumi clan. A Paramsha system fruit ability user, I heard you also know a flame sword style? Mihawk didn't care about the wailing of these defeated dogs. Instead, he recalled some information from the reports. Lord, this is Foxfire, one of the 50 skillful grade blades. It is with this blade that he can release flames. Fukurokaju quickly handed over 2 katanas with red handles, red patterns, and black scabbards. Oh? Mihawk and Giant's gaze focused on the blades. The former asked. Why are there 2? Because Foxfire was originally forged for a 2-sword style swordsman. Upon receiving the explanation, Mihawk took the twin swords and handed one to Giant, whose eyes were full of curiosity. With 2 swishes of drawing swords, both of them drew the long sabers and examined the shimmering blades. But they didn't seem like much. However, when Giant casually swung to the left, blazing flames suddenly erupted from the blade, instantly raising the surrounding temperature. Wow! Giant looked at Foxfire in her hand with surprise. Although she had seen many Mto, this was the first time she had seen a blade that came with natural elements. On the other side, Mihawk also ignited the blade's flame, making the original master, Kinemon, grit his teeth and shout for the blades to be returned. These blades were also forged in your Wano country, right? Can more be made? Mihawk already had Black Blade, Yaru, and was not a 2-sword style swordsman himself, so it was naturally impossible for him to switch to using this Foxfire. As for Giant, she had Konpira and would not easily abandon her usual personal sword. So, he planned to send these 2 burning blades, along with Inma, Shuzui, and Hidden Rain Village no Habakiri, to Lord Inma as a collection. But he wondered if this kind of blade could be mass-produced. I am very sorry, but it is said that the craftsmanship for forging such miraculous blades has been lost. However, you can send people to ask the swordsmiths. Is that so? That's too bad. Mihawk noticed that after the blade remained still for a while, the flames on it gradually diminished and finally extinguished completely. Seeing this, he stopped swinging the blade, casually inserted it into the scabbard, and then handed it to Giant to hold as well. Imprison him and this female ninja. Yes. The surrounding marines came over and took the still cursing Kinemon and the dazed Shinobu into the cabin, leaving only Kikunojo standing there. Why is it a woman? Didn't they say it was Izo's brother? Mihawk looked strangely at the beauty before him, who was wearing armor but had a bright yellow female kimono underneath. Ahem, he is indeed a man, but he was born with this appearance. Fukurokaju glanced at the expressionless Kikunojo, who was just lowering his head, and whispered. Is that so? You really brought us big trouble. Mihawk stared coldly at Kikunojo. Humphrey, after the Whitebeard pirates arrive, you murderers who harmed Lord Odin will definitely pay a heavy price, and don't even think about continuing to occupy Wano country. Kikunojo suddenly raised his head and said fiercely, but his pretty appearance made it hard to scare people when he was angry. So you'd rather let Wano country continue to be controlled by a group of pirates? Mihawk didn't want to say anything more to him and ordered someone to take him down and lock him up as well. At this moment, Fukurokaju, who was kneeling on one knee, suggested. General Sama, I think he would make a perfect hostage. We'll see about that later. You may withdraw. Mihawk naturally knew this, but he didn't like doing such matters, and it hadn't reached the point where it was necessary. Just then, everyone on the warship who could use observation hockey simultaneously looked up towards a certain direction in the high altitude. Kaido? They saw a blue divine dragon stepping on flame clouds, flying rapidly from a distance as if riding the clouds and mist. But when he got closer to the ground, everyone's pupils trembled violently. Even Mihawk frowned. Because they saw that beside the azure dragon, there was a woman standing on a massive thundercloud. Big Mom. Chapter 273, Duel between the world's strongest man and woman? Kaido actually brought Big Mom. What is he trying to do? Marines of all ranks on the two flying warships raised their vigilance to the highest level. Dozens of officers wearing Code of Justice drew their swords and clenched their fists, using moonwalk to form a defense line in the air. Although the ninjas of the Mimowarigmi didn't recognize Big Mom, seeing the Marines' intense reaction, they also realized the newcomers were not friendly. This caused the ninjas, who had already recognized Mihawk as the general of Wano country, to quickly move under the leadership of Fukurokudu and others, guarding him and Giant in the center. Unfortunately, they couldn't use aerial movement techniques like moonwalk and could only stand on the deck, staring intently at the approaching azure dragon and thundercloud. Mihawk, is Kaido going to betray us? Giant's pretty face showed a worried expression. With their current combat power, dealing with just Kaido was difficult, let alone adding another 4 emperors. Unlikely. He has no reason to do that. Mihawk replied expressionlessly. In the past, there might have been a possibility. Kaido could have planned to team up with Big Mom to occupy Wano country and then capture him, a celestial dragon, as a hostage. By doing so, leveraging the extremely harsh climate environment around Wano country, the Marines would be unable to dispatch a large-scale fleet for a punitive expedition. But now, this approach wouldn't work. The world government had already mastered the ability to mass-produce flying warships. Kaido should be well aware that Wano country's natural barrier was no longer a big problem. Furthermore, doing so would completely cut off his possibility of conquest in other worlds. So Mihawk was actually quite calm, but it's better to be safe than sorry, so he didn't order the Marines and ninjas to lower their guard. After all, the opponents were pirates. Mama, it seems Mama's arrival has scared that little celestial dragon brat. Charlotte Linlin, standing on Zeus, looked at the tense Marine officers and laughed heartily, not caring at all. That's normal, Linlin. Wait a moment, I'll go talk to that kid. Without waiting for a reply, the azure dragon directly returned to human form and leaped towards the warship where Mihawk was. The Marine officers hesitated seeing Kaido approach so casually. They didn't know if they should intercept him. Let him come. Fortunately, Mihawk gave the order at this moment. Thus, Kaido successfully landed on the deck, but his body size and weight caused the entire warship to shake, startling the ninjas as well. The overbearing aura of a powerhouse was truly terrifying. Kid, Big Mom wants to talk to you, or rather, talk to the world government behind you. Kaido didn't approach further, paying close attention to the safe distance between them. However, what he said piqued Mihawk's interest, who asked, "Talk about what?" "I already told her about that matter. It's not suitable to discuss it here." Kaido teased playfully. Mihawk thought for a moment. Given the power difference between the two sides, Big Mom had no need to resort to close-quarters assassination. He then agreed. "Let her come over. We'll talk in the cabin." With that, Mihawk turned and walked towards the cabin door, but after a few steps, he stopped and turned back to look at Giant, who was still standing there. "You come too." He felt it was time for Giant to know about the Stargate and other worlds, especially since the Supreme Political Conference had already concluded. Okay. A moment later, the four gathered in a meeting room inside the warship's cabin. The space here was quite large, spacious enough even with Kaido and Big Mom, these two colossus, standing inside. However, outside the door stood dozens of Marine officers and Mimowarigmi ninjas. "Your name is Mihawk, right? I've heard about the Stargate from Kaido, and I'm very interested." Charlotte Linlin didn't bother finding a seat. She just stood opposite them, grinning happily and chuckling softly. The current her was truly not as obese as she would be 20 years later. Although she couldn't compare to her slender and sexiness figure from over a decade ago, she only looked like her neck was a bit thick and her facial outline slightly wider. Overall, she was still a ripe beauty. "So you also want to join the three forces like Kaido?" No, Mama doesn't want to be a soldier. I want to join the world government as the king of an affiliated country." Charlotte Linlin looked at Mihawk and Giant with full confidence. This indeed brought surprised expression to their faces. "Anything else?" Mihawk was speechless for a moment before asking again. "Of course. My Tato Land Kingdom must have a qualification seat to attend the reverie, my bounty must be cancelled, and I must be able to freely enter and exit that Stargate. Charlotte Linlin became more excited as she spoke, but she didn't think these demands were excessive. With her powerful strength and numerous elite children under her command, the world government would definitely gain a lot by her affiliation. Although I don't have the authority to make the decision, before I contact headquarters for you, I need to confirm a few things. For example, after your affiliation, will you abide by the world government law, obey the world government's order, and remove your pirate crew's flag? Mihawk asked 3 questions expressionlessly. About that. Charlotte Linlin hesitated, but in the end, the temptation of otherworld dessert and delicious food overcame everything. She nodded. As long as the order isn't too excessive, I will naturally accept it, and the pirate crew can be disbanded. In that case, I will convey your intentions later. But before that, you must do something for the world government first. Mihawk looked meaningfully at the world's strongest woman before him. Mama, speak. Charlotte Linlin put her hands on her hips and readily agreed, taking everything upon herself. After all, there were few things in this world she couldn't do. We received news that before long, the man known as the world's strongest man, Whitebeard Edward Newgate, will lead his entire crew here. I need you to stop him. In Mihawk's view, Whitebeard being the world's strongest man required quotation marks, while Big Mom being the world's strongest woman was genuine and unquestionable. What? Charlotte Linlin and Kaido, this rather comical sister and brother pair, shouted almost in unison. Why is that monster coming here? What did you do to provoke him? Kaido's gaze became serious. It's like this. Mihawk briefly explained the whole matter from beginning to end. After listening, Charlotte Linlin breathed a sigh of relief. Mama, so you just need me to block Whitebeard for a few days? That's definitely not a problem. Unlike Kaido, she was already a veteran highest combat power. Coupled with her equally monster-level super talent, even Whitebeard wouldn't be able to defeat her in a short amount of time. Didn't that celestial dragon brat say it? At most 3 days, that bastard Garp would arrive. What was there to consider then? Mihawk was not surprised that Big Mom agreed. Alright then. Do you need me to arrange a residence for you? No need, I'll just stay with Kaido. Charlotte Linlin waved her hand casually. After finishing the serious matter, she immediately turned to leave, asking Kaido as she walked. There should be delicious food here in Wano country too, right? Hurry and take me to see. You'd have to ask Queen about that, but I have good wine at my place. Want a few drinks? Get lost. Mihawk and Giant watched speechlessly as the 2 giant man and woman walked side by side, chatting and laughing. For some reason, this screen feed always gave them a sense of incongruity. It was the feeling that these famous great pirates, who had dominated the Great Sea, shouldn't be like this. What is the Stargate? Giant suddenly turned her face and asked curiously. Chapter 274, Whitebeard's 3 views are challenged. The enormous ark, as large as a city, still floated above Holy Land Mary Ejos. Many people were curious about who exactly lived on it. Could it be that the celestial dragons had collectively moved up there? Or were the 5 elders going out for a trip? But after so many days, there had been no explanation, which made some sharp-minded people afraid to discuss it further, only occasionally looking up at the sky. Because it had truly blocked the sun for a long time. Lord Amu, please issue your decision regarding Charlotte Linlin's application to join the world government. The glittering golden communication snail said with lowered eyes. Im sat in his chair, enjoying the warmth of the sunlight while calmly observing the fishing rod in front of him. Meanwhile, his brain was thinking at high speed. Big Mom proactively joining was something he had truly never thought of before. Now that Kaido had helped solve this, it made him even more satisfied with Kaido. The entire Charlotte family could be said to be full of talent. Agree to her request, but the entry and exit of the Stargate must follow orders. Recently, you can arrange for her to go to Kabinarai World, and then reveal that a second Stargate will be available soon. Furthermore, her children must also join the various departments of the world government, and she has a Mink tribe subordinate named Paycombs. Have him hand over his life card. Enlisted everything he thought of, while continuing to ponder if there were other usable aspects. The 5 elders on the other side carefully recorded the content they heard. Before she officially joins, have her hold another tea party to lure out that Sea Transport King. You must find a way to capture him. This Sea Transport King must have mastered the movement patterns of the White Dragon. This is a long, stick-shaped vortex that only appears in the deep sea. Because it looks like a white divine dragon swimming in the deep sea, it is called the White Dragon in legend. Its most mysterious aspect is that it can transport things caught in it to extremely distant sea areas. The reason why successive sea transport kings have been able to tightly monopolize the world's sea transport trade and escape every time they were surrounded and captured is likely because they utilized the White Dragon. In the Summit War in the canon, some people speculated that the reason the Red Air pirates were able to reach the Marine headquarters on the other side of the Red Line at an extremely high speed after a great battle with the Beast pirates in the New World was also due to this White Dragon. They also said that the Great Eddy in the triangle current between Anai's lobby, Marine headquarters, and Impel Down was actually one of the fixed exits of the White Dragon. Im deeply agreed with these speculations. Regardless, first capture the Sea Transport King. Yes, Lord Amu. The Golden Communication Snail replied respectfully. Finally, you must warn Charlotte Linlin that once she joins the world government, she must obey the law and must not arbitrarily carry out national destruction for any reason. Speaking of this, Im's tone became extremely ice-cold. As the supreme ruler, for the future world conquest, he could ruthlessly disregard her past actions, but he would not tolerate behavior that disobeyed orders after joining. Even if she was Big Mom. Dark clouds covered the top. The sea was roaring, and the wind was howling. Rows of giant waves were constantly stirred up, and these giant waves surged forward row by row, crashing heavily against a giant ship over 100 meters long, shattering into pieces, but immediately being stepped on by the following waves, creating dull thuds. Water dragon twisters connecting the sky and the sea raged wildly around, creating a picture of a maritime dead end, like the arrival of doomsday. Gorahaha. The sea area here is as fierce as ever. Compared to here, other places in the New World are just like children throwing tantrums. Edward Newgate wore a white captain's hat, his golden long hair flowing down to his shoulders like a waterfall from inside. He stood boldly on the deck of the Moby Dick, which was shaped like a whale, letting the pouring heavy rain and the gale beat against his chest. His large mouth under his signature crescent-shaped white beard laughed unrestrainedly. Old man. The very young-looking Marco, Jazu, Thatch, Vista, Izo, and Teach, who was hiding in the crowd, along with many other crewmates of the Whitebeard pirates. They were also getting wet from the rain and blown by the wind behind him. From time to time, someone would strike and instantly shatter the approaching water dragon twisters. Marco, who was most familiar with Whitebeard, could feel a faint sense of heaviness from his old man's laughter and back. Clearly, even this world's strongest man. His mood at this moment was not as relaxed as it appeared on the surface. Because next, they were very likely to have a major conflict with the world government. Almost there. Although the climate on the sea was extremely harsh, Izo could still feel that they were not far from Wano country. His mood was complex now, feeling grief and sadness for the death of Kazuki Oden. He was also grateful and happy that his old man was willing to help him liberate his hometown and rescue his brother. But ever since he learned that their opponent might not be Kaido, nor Bandai World, but the world government, his mood had become heavy again. His many years of overseas experience had long made him understand the meaning represented by the words world government. Even if the Whitebeard pirates were called the world's strongest pirate crew, if they were to truly clash head-on with a colossus like the world government, there would be no surprise that they would be completely wiped out in the end. He was now essentially pushing his old man and his companions into an extremely dangerous predicament. Rumble. Just as everyone on the ship had their own thoughts. This already extreme climate seemed to be getting even more terrifying. Within the pitch-black dark clouds, streaks of purple lightning began to flash. Crack, just then, a thunderclap suddenly echoed in the sky. This thunder seemed to shake the entire sea surface, which was churning with surging waves. A strong flash of purple electric light illuminated everyone's vision. Boom, the next moment, a pillar of light formed by a purple violent lightning descended from the sky, like divine punishment, heading straight for the Moby Dick. This caused the expressions of many crewmates on the deck to change drastically. Humphrey, what are you getting involved for? Big Mom. At this instant, Edward Newgate's face turned cold. Although he held the Murakamagiri, a supreme-grade sharp sword shaped like a glaive, in his hand, he showed no intention of raising or swinging his blade. Just with his cold snort and angry shout, the space around the entire ship visibly began to tremor. All the air seemed to solidify into glass with cracks. Bang, an unimaginable scene appeared. The purple lightning pillar of light, like a waterfall, was actually blocked by the layers of shattered air. They looked as if they were about to shatter into pieces, but in reality, they transformed into an invisible barrier, like an absolute defense, protecting the wide giant ship. And incidentally, they completely shattered dozens of water dragon twisters within a radius of several hundred miles, which was ridiculously strong. Mama as the purple light and the quake cancelled each other out in the wind and rain-lashed void, Charlotte Linlin's uni-cloud laugh echoed. It's her. Why is Big Mom here? That's not the point, did she just attack us? She attacked, right? Is she crazy? The division commanders of the Whitebeard pirates were shocked and angry. Ever since the flying pirates vanished, the entire New World had entered a phase of two dominant powers. Everyone knew how great an impact a war between their two pirate crews would cause. Whitebeard, give me some face. Turn around and leave Wano country waters now. Mama can give you 2 ships full of the best candy, how about it? Charlotte Linland stood on Thundercloud Zeus and laughed widely. Besides her, there was also Sun Prometheus, like a small sun, and Azure Dragon Kaido, who was circling in the dark clouds, silently showing his presence. Edward Newgate looked up at these two with disbelief. You two are actually joining forces for the world government to stop this old man? He instantly felt that his 3 views were severely challenges. Chapter 275, King the Wildfire vs. Marco the Phoenix. Edward Newgate's mood at this moment, to say it was collapse would be an exaggeration, but to say he was extremely shocked was certainly no problem. On the way to Wano country, he had anticipated possibly facing a massive marine fleet, perhaps even led jointly by Garp and Sengoku. But he never dreamed that the ones blocking him would be Big Mom and Kaido. The cold wind and rain slapped against Whitebeard's face. His shocked and angry pupils merged with the wind and rain, and the colors before his eyes seemed to be obscured by the gloomy dark clouds. Mama, for certain reasons, I cannot let you step half a step into the country behind me. Charlotte Linland's mood was actually very complex at this time. Although she wore a seemingly indifferent smile, she still felt intensely uncomfortable facing Whitebeard's questioning. This old man remembers you saying you wanted to be the Pirate King after Roger back then. Now it seems that was just bullshit. Edward Newgate said with a laugh of anger. At the same time, he suddenly felt a sense of loneliness. Roger was dead, Shiki was gone, and Doden was also dead. Although Big Mom and Kaido had many conflicts with him in the past, those could only be considered competition between peers. When facing the world government, they could still stand on the same battle line and jointly oppose the outside world. This was also the reason why the world government and Marine's influence had been difficult to spread in the New World for so many years. Furthermore, they all came from the Rocks pirates, and in Whitebeard's heart, they were half-partners. But now these bastards were actually joining the world government's camp. And Burndai World, Chinzhou, these great pirates of the same generation as himself were also like this. For a moment, Edward Newgate looked out across the vast great sea and suddenly found that there was not a single person he could ally with. On his battle line, for some inexplicable reason, he was the only one left. Why? Edward Newgate shouted out the question he most wanted to know at this moment, facing the heavy rain. What did the world government give you that made you abandon even your own ambition? A roar of anger, carrying a violent aura, swept through the surging wind and rain. Marco and the others behind him realized that their old man was truly angry. You'll know the answer to that question sooner or later, but for now, step back for Mama. Charlotte Linland became quite annoyed and impatient. Her temper wasn't very good to begin with. If the opponent wasn't Edward Newgate, she would have slapped him to death long ago. But now, she could no longer hold back. Prometheus. Here, Mama. Big Mom stood upon the thundercloud and shouted loudly. The ball of fire floating beside her, which had a human-like face, immediately responded loudly. Finally going to fight? It was just that Kaido on the side was even more impatient than her. The fighting intent in his dragon eye turned into a red glow staining his pupil. Without a word, he opened his gaping maw, and a bright fireball condensed within it. The high temperature generated by its appearance immediately formed an invisible barrier, evaporating all the nearby rainwater into thick white mist. The moment the fireball expanded to its maximum, it transformed into a flame pillar, erupting with infinite light and heat, instantly illuminating the gloomy sky and earth. In the blink of an eye, it crossed a distance of several hundred meters and blasted towards the Moby Dick. Burrow breath. The scorching dragon breath from the Azure Dragon directly kicked off the combat. Swish, suddenly. A blue-yellow floating shadow rapidly swept out from behind Edward Newgate, blocking him and the ship, forming a large blue-yellow round shield that collided with the incoming scorching dragon breath. Under the pouring rain, blue flames and gunfire flash occupied both sides. The impact, more violent than the gale, swept in all directions, making the momentum in the court extremely grand. Until the Azure Dragon's burrow breath exhausted its last trace of flame, it still couldn't break through the Phoenix's defense. Marco's figure was seen reshaping within the blue flames. He looked at Kaido in the air and chuckled lightly. How could I possibly let you touch our jewel so easily? First Division Commander Marco the Phoenix. Kaido closed his mouth and swam his long dragon body within the dark clouds. His gaze, full of a sense of oppression, stared intently at the opponent. His current strength was significantly stronger than Marco's, but the latter's ability could indeed cause trouble in a drawn-out fight. Brother Kaido, leave him to me. At this moment, A black shadow wrapped in gunfire flash swooped down from the thick cloud layer. As it passed by Kaido, a faint voice attracted everyone's attention. It was actually a large black pterodactyl with raging flames erupting from its neck. It was like a supersonic fighter jet, accompanied by a sharp whistling sound, rushing towards the phoenix condensed from blue flames like a huge cannonball. Beast Pirates King the Wildfire, huh? A troublesome opponent has arrived. Marco's gaze became serious, but he still maintained a relaxed smile on his face. His personality was just like this, very optimistic and cheerful. Old man, I'll be busy now. Alright, I'll leave it to you. Under Edward Newgate's relieved gaze, the phoenix, wrapped in endless blue flame, transformed into a flying fire meteor and charged out. Danbo Emperor. Phoenix brand. The pitch-black dragon wings wrapped in raging flames and the bird claws burning with surging blue flames clashed head-on amidst layers of sonic boom and air current. Boom, blue-red dual flames intertwined. The air, under the terrifying force, was squeezed into wavy airwaves, raging across the entire area. Bang 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 bang, the two had no intention of warming up. From the moment they clashed, they fought fiercely. Continuous collisions erupted in endless explosions. In an instant, King and Marco fought wildly in high-speed movement, almost becoming too terrifying after images shuttling through the gunfire flash, fighting quickly. Wherever they passed, whether it was heavy rain, gale, or water dragon twister, everything would be swept away in an instant. No matter how extreme the climate was, it couldn't compare to the violent aura created by the two of them together. 21-year-old Marco and 24-year-old King fully displayed their combat talent. Thus, Kaido on this side started to make a move again. Unable to stand idly by, he opened his dragon mouth once more. This time, what he sprayed out was no longer flame, but dense, huge wind blades. Blast breath. This scene was like hundreds of marine officers simultaneously using Tempest Kick, covering the sky and earth as they enveloped the space above Edward Newgate. It seemed he was determined to compete with Whitebeard. Although he had been defeated countless times before, he still enjoyed it tirelessly. It's just a pity. Edward Newgate still made no move in the face of Kaido's renewed attack, not even bothering to look at him. Immediately after, another figure darted out from behind him. Boom 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 boom, countless sharp wind blades, nearly 2 meters long, struck this person like rainwater. But he was like a shining, indestructible treasure mountain, silently enduring all the cutting and chopping. Damn it, another one. Kaido glared with a face full of displeasure at the diamond man who had blocked all his wind blades and then landed heavily back on the Moby Dick's foe. It was Jazu, the 3rd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. Marco is right, you cannot touch old man. Jazu said in a deep voice with a blank expression. At the same time, 4th Division Commander Thatch, 5th Division Commander Vista, 6th Division Commander Blumenko, and the other commanders stepped forward one by one, jointly facing the ferocious azure dragon circling beneath the dark clouds. This left Kaido, who had almost become a lone wolf, somewhat speechless. Once upon a time, he also had a group of people under him. Now, only King was left to fight for him. Chapter 276, Imu's Appreciation for Whitebeard. However, Kaido's idea actually had a problem. Even if the Beast Pirates were still at full strength from before, they would not have been a match for the Whitebeard Pirates. Perhaps the Beast Pirates 24 years later could. He knew this well himself. Mama, I should have brought Charlotte Katakuri and the others. Charlotte Linlin thought similarly to Kaido upon seeing this scene. After hearing about the Stargate and other worlds, she had rushed over with Kaido hurriedly, completely forgetting to bring her children who had returned to their respective islands after the adjourned meeting. Otherwise, perhaps they could now witness a scene of Charlotte Katakuri battling Diamond Jazu. Big Mom, we are pirates. We must make our own decisions. It is your decision to stand in front of this old man, and it is my decision to cross over you. Edward Newgate's killing intent surged as he let out a deafening roar. You can try it, Whitebeard. Charlotte Linlin was not one to be intimidated either. Although she was indeed wary of the opponent's formidable strength, she wasn't truly afraid if it came to a fight. Big Mom. Edward Newgate roared furiously. His conqueror's haki completely erupted, his entire body swelling, his tendons and muscles becoming even stronger as they vibrated intensely. Boom, the dark red air current and the pink air current clashed like two armies facing off. It was as if a gale formed by an iron current collided with giant sea waves, shaking the sky and causing intense vibrations, locked in a stalemate. However, this aura, powerful enough to knock out thousands of soldiers and horses, was merely the exciting backdrop before the two four emperors made their move. Buzz, Edward Newgate's veins bulged on his arm, nodding like old tree roots. Every inch of muscle was visibly expanding. He gripped the blade handle with a hand strong enough to crush a bear to death. Immediately, A ball of white energy compressed with tremor power instantly appeared on Murakami-giri's blade. On the other side, Charlotte Linlin was not to be outdone. She immediately took off the pink captain's hat on her head, which was drawn with a skeleton, grinned widely, and shouted, "Napoleon! Here, Mama!" The next moment, the hat instantly transformed into a long, thick great cleaver. The blade even sprouted anthropomorphic eyes and a mouth, and could even speak. "Prometheus! I'm here, Mama!" Following the shout of the world's strongest woman, the anthropomorphic ball of fire, like a small sun, attached itself directly to Napoleon without hesitation. Interestingly, as the flame attached to the blade, its eyes became even fiercer. Even its mouth turned into a mouthful of fangs, and the entire blade became more slender with a larger curve, as if it had transformed into a giant flame cutlass. This was Big Mom's Emperor sword. Swish! Swish! The world's strongest man and the world's strongest woman exchanged no further words. Just in the space filled with Conqueror's hockey, they heavily swung the blades in their hands, flashing with streaks of lightning, towards each other. Doing, Murakami-giri and Emperor's sword collided fiercely in an instant. Tremor power and golden yellow flame intertwined wildly, and dense lightning flickered on and off during the collision. Boom 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 boom, an invisible impact erupted from the point of contact between the blades, pushing the air for hundreds of miles around into a mighty chi wall. It stirred up the surging sea waves below, forming a circular tsunami tens of meters high that rolled out in all directions. Most importantly, the dark clouds in the sky above were literally cut open. This is too terrifying. In the distance, a warship floated in midair. Giant struggled to stabilize herself in the oncoming gale, staring dumbfounded at the blue and white sky gradually appearing within the dark clouds. The extreme weather of Wano country was actually brought to a standstill by a single strike from 2 emperors. At this moment, Giant suddenly remembered something and looked at Mihawk in front of her with lingering fear. That was close. Fortunately, we listened to you and didn't stay up there, otherwise. They had initially planned to stay in the air above the center of the battlefield, as that would offer the best viewing angle. But if they had stayed there, the entire warship would likely have been destroyed by the aftershock. Mihawk remained silent. He had only remembered Lord Imu's reminder at the time, which was not to stay directly above 2 highest combat power individuals when they clashed using Conqueror's hockey. Now it seemed, that was truly a golden rule. Conqueror's hockey infusion, huh? Meanwhile, while Whitebeard Edward Newgate and Big Mom Charlotte Linlin were engaged in a century-level combat in the Wano country waters. Thousands of miles away, at the top of the Red Line continent, on the uppermost level of Noah's Ark above Holy Land Mary Ejos, Imu also sat in a chair, supporting his chin with one hand, squinting at the intense combat screen feed on the projection screen. He was enjoying this feeling immensely. Controlling everything in this world from a high vantage point, influencing the changes in everyone's fate, like a mastermind playing with these chess pieces. Things that would absolutely never happen in the canon had appeared under his individual orders. Whether it was the world government or the Marine headquarters, even powerhouses like Edward Newgate and Charlotte Linlin were being manipulated at his whim without their knowledge. This brought him endless desire for control and a sense of superiority. So this is Whitebeard's peak strength? He's indeed much stronger than during the Summit War. Imu looked at the vast ocean, which was like a cake, cut into large and small pieces, and the dark clouds that were completely torn open, revealing streaks of sunlight. He felt quite emotional. The key was that the current Whitebeard was not old, nor did he have a body full of injuries and illnesses. His stamina remained abundant. However, Big Mom was not weak either. Her strength, far surpassing that of the giant race, combined with her iron balloon physique, whose defense was no less than Diamond Jazu's, along with flame, lightning, and swordsmanship, was enough to contend with him. It was just that the penetrating effect inherent in the tremor fruit, because it produced an effect similar to the armament hockey internal destruction technique, caused her iron balloon to be somewhat countered. In fact, it wasn't just her, even Kaido's indestructible dragon scales would have difficulty gaining an advantage against the power of the tremor fruit. Tremor power with its own physical penetration and magic penetration, huh? Imu observed Whitebeard's every move with interest. In this world, any attack with a penetrating effect could always play a very strong role in combat. For example, the Mag Fruit's volcanic eruption, Killer's future guillotine gale, the Navy 6 Styles secret technique, 6 King gun, Sky Island's impact dial, and the Op Fruit's piercing wave, and so on. Similarly, Luffy's future Gum Fruit was said to be immune to blunt attacks, but he still vomited blood and was severely injured when facing the impact of the 6 King gun, showing how effective a sufficiently strong shockwave is. This Whitebeard is very good, very good. I'm a little looking forward to seeing him fight against powerhouses from other worlds. To Imu, the entire Sea Star world was his possession, and everyone in this world naturally belonged to his subjects and warriors. Basically, as long as there was a possibility of recruitment, he was very willing to accept them regardless of their origin. The world government was large enough to accommodate everyone. There was no such thing as not being able to fit someone in. Of course, the premise was that you must have value. I need to think about how to recruit him. Chapter 277, Preparations to deal with the soul domain. Gale, heavy rain. Dark clouds torn into large and small pieces by hockey, beams shooting down through the holes, surging monstrous waves, and deafening loud noise from the tremor. Accompanied by the 2 red and green meteors with sonic booms, chasing, colliding, and intersecting, they together formed the spectacular screen feed the Swano country waters. Thunderbagwa. On the deck of the Moby Dick, which was as large as a soccer court, Kaido, whose body size was 2 stories high, roared furiously. With speed completely undetectable by the naked eye, he swung the Kanabo in his hand and heavily struck Jaws's shining chest made of diamond. Thud, the unparalleled force squeezed the air, generating white mist like air current. The surging impact erupted at the point of impact. Even though the latter further strengthened the diamond's defense with armament hockey, he was still sent flying back like a baseball, only stopping when he crashed through the ship's railing. Despite this, Jaws still let out a muffled groan from the blow, feeling a faint pain in his chest. If his own ability and armament hockey weren't strong enough, he might have actually been hit hard enough to bleed. He raised his expression, which was pale with anger, and saw that Kaido, under the siege of the crowd, could still swing the Hosekai in his hand, sending their crewmates flying head over heels. Conqueror of the 3 worlds, Ragnarok. Congo, Arrow. Kaido roared and bellowed like a madman, but his face was filled with wild laughter, clearly enjoying the atmosphere of this great battle. His entire offensive was wide and sweeping, energy tearing through the air and surging violently, transforming into streaks of club shadows like a raging tide against the shore, enveloping the surrounding vista, Thatch, Izo, and over a dozen other Whitebeard pirates' captains. As for the ordinary crewmates, they didn't even have the ability to get close to the battlefield. Because the air there was like a pot of boiling muddy water, surging and roaring, churning and filled with dense blade light and fierce wind. However, although their combat was fierce, the core of the entire battlefield was still the bow area of the Moby Dick, the clash between Edward Newgate and Charlotte Lingland. The former effortlessly swung the incredibly heavy Murakami-ri in his hand, tearing through the rain curtain and gale, and slashed towards the latter. The latter, with a sinister grin, raised her cutlass burning with flame and lightning and met the attack. Mother's flame. At the same time, the thundercloud Zeus beneath her also stared with wide eyes, releasing terrifying purple thunderstorm towards various parts of Whitebeard's body. Countless thunderclaps and lightning strikes exploded between the 2 sides, electric light scattering everywhere, and gunfire flash soaring into the sky. Ha 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 ha, well met. Let this old man see how much you've improved. Edward Newgate's heroic spirit erupted, his sturdy body seemingly containing infinite strength. Murakami-ri and the Emperor sword clashed with fierce energy. The overflowing energy blasted in all directions, causing the sea surface within hundreds of miles to dent, crack, and raise massive pillars of waves soaring into the sky. The dark clouds in the air finally couldn't hold on and were completely torn apart by this renewed clash of hockey. The rain stopped, the wind quieted. But whether it was Whitebeard or Big Mom, they fought with increasing exhilaration, scattering the wind and clouds, churning the great sea, creating an incredibly astonishing scene. They had almost forgotten how long it had been since they fought with such full power. The 2 didn't compete in speed or technique, they just stood there and hacked at each other head-on without any technical skill, purely competing in strength and power. Allowing the tremor, flame, and lightning to constantly crisscross within the energy between their blades. Neither dodged, nor avoided. Splendid, splendid. It's just a shame the combat court isn't ideal. Im leisurely enjoyed the top-tier battle in the high-definition footage. One of them could only stand on the bow of the Moby Dick, while the other could only stand on the thundercloud Zeus. They couldn't fully unleash their true full power at all. However, this gave him a clearer understanding of the strength of these 2 worlds' strongest male and female. If they continued fighting one-on-one like this until the end, Big Mom definitely wouldn't be able to hold on. Her iron balloon was clearly countered by Whitebeard. However, Whitebeard also couldn't defeat Big Mom within 3 days. Since the result was already decided, Im's thoughts shifted from the combat to other matters, such as the arrangement for Charlotte Lingland. After all, it was impossible to really let her be just an ordinary king of an affiliated country. That would be a huge waste of talent. Speaking of which, the soul fruit ability, while not very useful right now, might not be the case in the future. There are definitely soul-type existences in the myriad worlds, like ghosts and such. Just as he had guessed before, since the first Stargate was the Kabinari world, The subsequent stargates were likely also worlds from his previous life's works. He just didn't know if, besides Japanese anime and manga, American comics, Chinese comics, or game worlds would appear. He wouldn't consider the later ones for now. Even if he only considered soul-type worlds from Japanese anime and manga, the one him could immediately think of was the Siriite AI. Furthermore, since even this Planet C world has the land of the Yellow Springs, then other worlds likely also have places similar to the Underworld or Netherworld. It seems necessary to establish a department specifically for dealing with the soul domain. Especially since Wano Country is likely the entrance and exit connecting to the land of the Yellow Springs. This can be corroborated by the Torii, Red Gates, seen everywhere there, the annual fire festival, and the Enma that futures Oro saw. Torii represent the entrance to the divine realm, used to distinguish the divine realm where gods reside from the mortal realm where humans live. Their existence serves as a reminder to visitors that stepping through this gate means entering the divine realm. The fire festival is for sacrificing to the dead, conveying thoughts and feelings for the deceased by releasing lantern boats similar to Kongming lanterns. And Enma does not refer to Kazuki Oden's great grade sword, but rather the ruler who truly exists in the Yami kingdom, known as the King of Hell. Im's sixth sense, which could be considered a superpower, was subtly reminding him that he would have to deal with this Enma sooner or later. Besides the ninja village and sword set, do I also need to establish a spirit palace in Wano Country? He planned to transfer both Charlotte Linlin and Brooke there, and subsequently gather all soul-type ability users to specifically be responsible for researching the soul domain and soul-type powerhouses in the multiverse. This matter could be done step by step, but he needed to have a clear idea in his heart. The current problem was that Brooke's strength was too weak. Furthermore, his body had completely disappeared, so there was no possibility of training to become stronger. Moreover, he preferred holding concerts and such, completely disregarding the improvement of his strength. Otherwise, as a high-level soul-type Yami fruit ability user, he would be the most suitable candidate to serve as the commander of the tentatively named Spirit Palace. However, if Brooke's ability continues to be developed, it could serve as a major trump card against Big Mom. Im coldly watched Charlotte Linlin fiercely battling Edward Newgate on the screen feed, thinking that having her as the Spirit Palace master didn't seem like a problem either. It's just that her craving sickness needs to be resolved somehow. This should be handed over to the Medical Academy for research. Also, Brooke can be asked to check the depths of her soul. He remembered an interesting speculation from his previous life. Perhaps Charlotte Linlin's true personality hadn't changed over the years. The kind, gentle, and extremely motherly appearance she had after losing her memory in Wano Country was her original self, while the cruelty, ruthlessness, and indifference she usually displayed were manifestations of Sister Carmel's soul. If that were the case, then for the world government, a gentle Big Mom would definitely be easier to control than a cruel Big Mom. Chapter 278, Im's Experiments and Work. Regarding the management of the world government, Im had always felt that he only needed to ensure two things, being the strongest and knowing how to utilize talent. The former goes without saying. As for the latter, it was naturally by relying on the innate advantage of a transmigrator, recognizing the talents who appeared in the canon, and arranging them to the most suitable positions based on their personalities, pursuits, and abilities. As for stepping up to the front and personally directing things, he felt he didn't have that skill. Before transmigrating, he wasn't a political big shot, nor a military higher-up, and he hadn't even researched the economy much. With this level of skill, he couldn't even manage a small restaurant, let alone an entire world government. People must have self-awareness. Blindly interfering with specific government affairs would only harm himself. Let professional people do professional things. Looking at the screen feed live broadcasted from Mihawk's side, the great battle there had clearly entered a stalemate. Marco and King were evenly matched opponents, a needlepoint against an on. There wasn't a big age gap between the two. Although the former's ability was the mythical Zone Phoenix form, said to be even rarer than the Logia system, the latter was just a relatively ordinary ancient Zone Pterodactyl form. But the Lunarian tribe's talent made him a flame pterodactyl comparable to a mythical zone. Their speed was similar. Although King's attack ability was more powerful, Marco's nearly immortal self-healing ability, as long as he had stamina, could still entangle with the former for several days and nights. After all, they were both zone users, and it was hard to say who was stronger in terms of stamina consumption and recovery. Even Im couldn't determine who would win or lose in the end. Below, Kaido alone fought against all the division commanders. He indeed seemed to be having a blast, but with his current strength, suppressing the entire crew in a short time wasn't an easy matter. Especially the combined offense and defense of Diamond Jazu, Chef Thatch, and Flower's Sword Vista, the division commanders of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th divisions, was enough to cause him trouble. As for the duel between Whitebeard and Big Moom, although the momentum and scene were extremely exaggerated and grand, Everyone knew it wouldn't yield a result for 7 or 8 days. This made him feel bored after watching for a while. He got up directly and played 2 rounds of tennis ball with Stussy, then jumped into the sparkling oversized swimming pool, enjoying the cool feeling of the water flowing over his skin. Outside, the battle raged fiercely, turning the sky dark, but here he was enjoying peaceful years. This was the life he wanted, at least the life he wanted now. It had been 2 years since he transmigrated to this world. For the first year, to master the strength of his original body, he could only hide in the room of authority and familiarize himself with the power. In the second year, to cope with the Great Pirate Era, he held countless late-night meetings with the world government and the 5 elders to improve things, and now it was finally basically on the right track. His somewhat suppressed mood had also relaxed considerably. Half an hour later, with a splash of water spray, Im leaped out of the pool like a flying fish, refreshed. He returned to his palace, washed up, changed his clothing, sat on a chair in the little garden, and picked up the file report sent by the 5 elders to read. It was through these that he understood the various processes of the world government. The territory of Hinimoto in the Kubanrai world had been cleared by the army led by Bullet. Although he couldn't say it was completely thorough, at least most areas were no longer visible. However, this so-called clearing didn't mean killing everyone, but gathering them up and sending them to the basically completed Kabane Resource Regeneration Factory for management. Next, they planned to wait for the shipyard to build ships, then head to the continent in the west to take a look. From the map, it seemed they would land on the Korean peninsula, where it was highly likely to still be full of Kubanrai world. Yatsugawa Ayam is applying for a devil fruit for her husband, Kurasu? Im raised an eyebrow. Leaving aside what she would offer in exchange for this top-secret treasure, whether this other-worlder could even eat a devil fruit was an unknown. Vegapunk's research on devil fruits clearly indicated that there was a high probability that these things were artificial, and thus likely tailor-made for the genes of sea-star people. However, it could be an experiment. Maybe that Kurisu will just self-destruct after eating it. But if an ability user in another world dies, will the devil fruit still return to Planet C? In fact, this question wasn't just something he thought of, the Academy of Science had also considered it. But the report stated very clearly that because there was currently no technology to track devil fruits, it was impossible to confirm this matter. After all, both the Kubanrai world and the Planet C are so large. If someone dies, who knows where the devil went? Let's give them one. Let's see if other worlders can eat them, and if there's a difference compared to sea-star people if they can, especially Paramsha system. Im seriously suspected that with the weak physique of the people in the Kubanrai world, it would be difficult to provide enough stamina for ability use. Giving them an animal system might have a good effect, as animal system simply enhances physique and provides a few form changes. But he really wanted to know if his guess was correct. He couldn't just give them an animal system and a Paramsha system for free, that would be too wasteful and unnecessary. Let's go with a Paramsha system. Since it's an experimental nature, there must be sufficient experimental effect. But we can't just give it to them for free. A Paramsha system devil fruit is worth 200 million to 300 million Bailey at market price, so let the shogunate of Hinimoto buy it for 500 million Bailey. Im thought as he made annotations on the document. However, they hadn't started changing currency there yet, so they could owe it for now. Anyway, he wasn't worried about them not repaying the world government's money. As for whether Kurisu would have any side effects after eating the Paramsha system devil fruit, that was none of his business. He then picked up another document. Dragon's Ministry of Police Affairs has already built police stations in the kingdom capitals of 15 kingdoms in the first half of the Grand Line. Not bad, not bad. But as he read on, Im's gaze became displeased. Because it was written later that due to the lack of high-level combat power, the local police found it difficult to suppress troublesome pirates and other dangerous criminals. Many times, Dragon, the minister, had to personally take action. Fortunately, he was a Logia system hurricane fruit user, and his travel speed was quite fast. Otherwise, if he had to travel by warship, everything would be too late. This was clearly a little trick from the Marine headquarters. 8 out of 10 of the 10,000 Marines transferred to the Ministry of Police Affairs were not elites, or perhaps the Marines officers themselves didn't want to go. Being transferred from the Marines to the Army was at least somewhat acceptable, as they were both part of the military. But what was the deal with going to be police? Once the Charlotte family members are in place, I can allocate some to Dragon. This police force must be strengthened. Oh right, Kizaru seems to have a kid who's suitable to be a police officer. Im thought for a moment and made annotations again, then put down the document and continued reading. There were quite a few of these documents, although they didn't pile up into a mountain, there were still more than a dozen. The number 0002 Stargate base is about to be completed? That's a good thing. The sooner it's built, the sooner I can leave. Vegapunk used the Munch Munch fruit ability to create shape memory alloy. This reminded him of the cannon's Vinsmoke raid suit and that General Frankie. However, it would definitely take some time to develop these things. Moreover, Im was more interested in the Vinsmoke family's genetic engineering modification biochemical technology, as it allowed people to possess supernatural ability without eating devil fruits. However, at the current time point, that guy Vinsmoke Judge should still be in research, so it's best not to affect him for now. He can just pick the fruit later. Vegapunk is applying to have Sakazuki accompany him on a trip to the future kingdom. Chapter 279, The Fallen New World. Wano country's climate is very stubborn. It had just been beaten up by 4 emperors, and before it could calm down for long, its face turned dark again. The dark clouds that were originally torn to shreds gradually reformed. Heavy rain fell again, and the gale rose again. After all, the two of them were not Logia system awakened users, and they couldn't permanently change the climate of an area. Bang 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 bang, under the dark clouds, terrifying momentum and astonishingly impactful collision sounds echoed, accompanied by continuous super high-speed after images, one red and one blue. They were truly fighting at supersonic speeds. What does that mean? It means that if they were on the ground, the air current stirred up by their movement alone would be enough to crack the ground and break trees. If they were among tall buildings, they could shatter all the glass from a distance of nearly 100 meters. If it were a person, the effects would be severe, mild symptoms like tinnitus, ruptured eardrums, and unconsciousness, or instant death in severe cases. Fortunately, the battlefield for both sides was at a high altitude of over 1,000 meters. Besides the booming explosions and waves of air currents, there wasn't much major impact. Whoosh! Whoosh! Amidst the extremely sharp whistling sounds, King and Marco streaked like straight lines of light. One wielded a burning long saber, and the other attacked with azure flame phoenix claws. They almost became too terrifying after images shrouded in blurry air currents. Whoosh! Suddenly, just as two blazing masses of flame of different colors, evaporating the rain curtain under the countless shocked gazes from the distant warships, were about to collide. A black lightning bolt flew vertically down from the black cloud layer, bang bang. The next second, whether it was the flame pterodactyl or the azure flame phoenix, they were sent flying back at an even faster speed amidst wild laughter. No. It should be said they fell down. All of this happened too quickly, but it successfully stopped the combat on all sides. Kaido quickly manifested as an azure dragon and swung a dragon tail, sweeping Vista, Jazu, and the others away. Without a word, he flew off the deck of the Moby Dick and quickly caught his little brother who was about to fall into the seawater. Edward Newgate's expression also changed drastically, but Charlotte Linlin in front of him wouldn't stop easily. He could only watch helplessly as Marco plunged headfirst into the surging seawater. Marco. The Whitebeard pirate's crewmates behind him were also greatly shocked. "Old man, leave it to me." Just then, Namor shouted loudly, took a flying leap into the deep sea, and disappeared without a trace. But this made everyone heave a sigh of relief. Because this 8th Division captain was a Fishman tribe member. Soon, everyone's attention was focused on the figure who had suddenly intervened in the combat and attacked without distinguishing between friend and foe. The key was that he actually had the skill to knock Flame Calamity King and Phoenix Marco down. Ha 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 ha. Looks like this old man wasn't late. Not bad, not bad. Seeing the guy who stood firm as a mountain in a high altitude, stepping on air and letting the gale blow over him, everyone present immediately recognized him. Garp. Edward Newgate gritted his teeth and shouted, veins popping on his forehead. "What are you bastard doing? We're on the same side now." Kaido, not far away, also roared, his dragon eyes wide. But Garp grinned insincerely and laughed. Sorry, this old man is getting old, my eyes are a bit blurry, I just casually slapped them away." "You." Kaido was furious, but Garp had already turned his head and ignored him, looking instead at Edward Newgate. "Yo, haven't seen you in a few months, Whitebeard." Edward Newgate also breathed a sigh of relief in his heart seeing Marco being carried onto the ship by Namor. He glanced coldly and snorted. "Didn't expect you to arrive so quickly. Did you run all the way?" "Not really, this old man came by ship. Look, it's right up there." Garp pointed above his head with a grin. Everyone's gaze shifted upwards, and sure enough, they saw a marine warship vaguely hidden within the dark clouds. This stunned the entire Whitebeard pirates. A warship was flying in the sky. Then where in this world could the Marines not go in the future? But Edward Newgate narrowed his eyes and asked with a tone of surprise and uncertainty. Could it be that even that bastard Shiki has submitted? At this moment, his 3 views were instantly dealt another heavy blow. They had already cracked because of Charlotte Linlin and Kaido before, and now they were almost shattered. That's not clear, after all, it's not under this old man's management. Garp picked his nose and pouted, then his eyelids drooped, and he looked down at the other party, saying, However, this Wano country will be personally overseen by me from now on. Shouldn't you withdraw? Edward Newgate fell silent amidst the gale and heavy rain. Garp, we can completely take care of Whitebeard by joining forces, why let him leave? Charlotte Linlin, stepping on a thundercloud, flew back into the air and said loudly. Exactly, and with me here. Kaido let go of King, who could now fly on his own, and shamelessly asserted his presence. Humphrey, since you two have decided to join the world government, you must learn to obey orders. This old man's military rank is admiral, so you have to listen to me. Garp warned them unreasonably. You. Charlotte Linlin and Kaido were both furious. Actually, before Garp arrived, he had received a new order from Sengoku. It said that the world government requested him not to have too big of a conflict with Whitebeard, and just force him to retreat from Wano country. Regarding this order, he didn't understand it at first. Although it was a bit uncomfortable to join forces with a great pirate like Big Mom, it would be a good thing if they could take the opportunity to deal with Whitebeard. But being thick-skinned didn't mean he was truly stupid. Garp immediately realized that the world government was preparing to recruit Whitebeard as well. However, he was very curious. Whitebeard was different from Charlotte Linlin and Kaido. Although stargates and other worlds were a significant temptation, it was absolutely impossible to make him obedient just based on that. One must know that this old fellow wasn't even interested in becoming the Pirate King. He wasn't someone with ambition, nor was he particularly fond of novelty. Also, even if they wanted to recruit Whitebeard, they could wait until they captured him. Why deliberately give up and let him leave? Could it be that the world government was still thinking of recruiting him just by talking? Therefore, he still didn't understand. However, as an old soldier, obeying orders was something he could do. Garp, this old man wants to know what exactly the world government relies on to make these bastards obey orders? Edward Newgate asked in a deep voice. Garp smiled. Ha 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 ha, don't worry, you'll know sooner or later. Maybe you'll become one of those bastards yourself then. Dream on. Edward Newgate seemed to not want to look at the few of them again. He turned around directly and shouted expressionlessly towards his sons. Return to port. Yes. At this moment, even Izo couldn't say much. After all, facing Big Mom and Garp, even their own old man was helpless. He could only glance towards Wano country with a complex gaze. At the same time, all the crewmates realized that the New World Sea area had completely fallen, and they alone could not stop the world government's influence from entering. Holy Land Mary Ejos, above Noah's Ark saw him looked at the Moby Dick turning its bow on the projection screen and the seemingly weathered, lost, and heavy back of Whitebeard. A meaningful smile appeared on their face. Don't rush, world's strongest, we'll meet soon. Very grateful to reader for the 200 Gideon coin tip. Bo. Thank you for your encouragement and support. Chapter 280, Admiral Big Mom. How is it? Did you find anything? On another warship deck, Mihawk looked at Garp, Big Mom, Kaido, and King flying towards them, asking without turning his head. Senior Director Bayer, who was waiting behind him, quickly replied. The warships in the other 4 directions haven't detected any approaching ships or birds, nor have they found any transponder snail signals. Here's the situation. In order to temporarily keep Charlotte Linlin's affiliation with the world government a secret, they received an order from the higher-ups to ensure confidentiality. So Mihawk positioned the 5 flying warships he brought in various locations to monitor the sea surface and the air. At the same time, each ship had a horn transponder snail activated to block communications and a white den mushi to prevent eavesdropping. This was mainly to guard against the news agency, which claimed to be omnipresent. Fortunately, Wano country itself is located in a remote area, and the sea area's climate is extremely harsh. Ordinary birds cannot operate here at all, and exploration ships are even less able to hide themselves in such turbulent waves. Whoosh! Just then, with a loud noise, Garp landed from the air, followed by Charlotte Linlin and the others. Honestly, someone who didn't know might think he wasn't a marine anymore and was preparing to be the next Rox. Ha 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 ha, I didn't expect there to be someone as agreeable as you among the celestial dragons. This old man has seen something new. The newly promoted Iron Fist Admiral Garp showed no reverence towards Mihawk, a celestial dragon. Instead, after looking him up and down in surprise, he tilted his head back and laughed loudly. You've worked hard, Admiral Garp. Mihawk didn't mind and greeted him rather politely. Garp's face showed astonishment upon hearing this, and for a moment, he didn't know what to say. Since when did celestial dragons have such manners? Cough cough, alright. Anyway, according to the order, this old man will stay in Wano country for a year. Then I'll look forward to Admiral Garp's guidance from now on. Mihawk looked at Garp with anticipation. This was a great expert who could be called the strongest in the Marines. If he could spar with him every day, it would likely be of considerable help to the improvement of his strength. Kid, did you tell them over there about my matter? At this moment, Charlotte Linlin flew over, carried by thundercloud zoos. Although it was still gale and heavy rain outside, no one cared. Wind and rain were practically a common occurrence for seafarers in this world. You've already been notified. Mihawk nodded, his calm gaze meeting the gaze of this fearsome woman who was like a giant. This was quite remarkable, considering that giant beside him felt somewhat uneasy facing Big Mom's gaze. The world government has approved the Tato Land Kingdom's application for affiliation and a seat at the Reverie, but this matter will be officially announced after you finish your tea party. Hearing this, Charlotte Linlin showed a happy smile, while Garp shook his head, somewhat displeased. However, having already learned about the multiverse conquest strategy, he was helpless. After all, even he had to admit that this woman was indeed strong and one of the few top-tier combatants on this planet C. Furthermore, although you won't be assigned to the three forces, according to the Supreme Military Command's new regulations, all individuals recognized as having highest combat power under the world government will be granted the admiral rank and be under the direct jurisdiction of the command department. Mama, alright, as long as you don't bother Mama too much. Charlotte Linlin waved her hand dismissively and laughed. I never thought Mama would become an admiral one day. As the wicked woman said this, she playfully glanced at Garp beside her, which made Garp's hand suddenly feel a little itchy, so itchy that he subconsciously clenched his fist. Seeing that she seemed to have misunderstood something, Mihawk explained. It's only the admiral military rank, without any corresponding authority. However, you will be given a custom-made code of justice. It just depends on whether you prefer white, black, or another color. I like pink. You can just tell the relevant department about that later. Mihawk nodded and continued. In addition, if you need to, you can head to the Kavinrai world immediately, but the journey to the Red Line must be kept completely secret. That's great. Mama wants to go take a look right now. Charlotte Linlin was overjoyed, her eyes filled with excitement. Then she grabbed Kaido, who was behind her. Let's go. Quickly take me to that Stargate base. No problem. Kaido turned back into his Azure Dragon form. It just so happened that he also had something to go to Manaford for. He then said to King, "Do you want to go together?" King hesitated for a moment, but finally made up his mind and said in a deep voice, "Okay, it's been a long time since I've seen the scenery on top of the Red Line." As a Lunarian, he was originally a native of the Red Line, but due to the endless pursuit, he had to go to sea to escape. He wanted to take a look at the place where he lived as a child. Soon. As the two-day sea battle completely ended, everyone went their separate ways. Garp followed Mihawk and Giant back to Wano country, while Kaido, King, and Big Mom headed to the Red Line together. At the same time, a flying warship carrying Queen also followed behind, preparing to take him to Impel Down. Before long, the Biochemical Research Institute on level 5.5 underground would gain one more black biochemist. Then they also had to send several Mto to Noah's Ark above Holy Land Mary Ejos. About one day later, because the flight speed of the three, Kaido, King, and Big Mom, was much faster than the flying warship, they arrived at the Red Line first. But upon arriving, they immediately saw the supergiant ship, Noah's Ark, floating in the air. What is that thing? Is it a ship? It's so big. Charlotte Linlin and King looked up at the sky in shock. In her eyes, this thing was definitely even bigger than Whole Cake Island. I don't know either. I asked the people at the Stargate base, and they didn't seem to understand either, but it's likely prepared for those celestial dragons, and it must have utilized Golden Lion Shiki's ability. Kaido looked at Noah's Ark with mixed feelings. Next, after saying something, King went towards his hometown alone. Only the two of them remained, chatting as they continued flying towards Area RL 1556. They had no interest at all in taking a look at Mary Joyce, which was just nearby. The Holy Land Garrison, Army, and Cypher Pul responsible for security had already received advance notice, so not many people came out to intercept them. Soon, the number 0001 Kavinrai World Stargate base appeared before their eyes. The various facilities here had become increasingly complete and were no longer the previous open-air camp. It had been renovated into a large-scale stone wall fortress, sealed with a 100-meter-high steel gate. Outside, there were also a large number of army soldier and various armored vehicles responsible for guarding. The gun barrels of the anti-aircraft guns were routinely aimed at Kaido and Charlotte Linlin flying over. We've arrived. Kaido ignored the gaze of these scraps of metal and directly changed back to human form. The woman beside him also jumped down from the thundercloud. Immediately, a pair of giant man and woman, reaching a height of 7 and 8 meters respectively, landed heavily in front of the base gate. Welcome, both of you. I am Senior Director Addison of this Stargate base, and this is Miss Stussy, who is responsible for helping you pass through the Stargate. Two people of normal size, a man and a woman, walked out accompanied by a group of army and man in black. The person who introduced himself as Addison greeted them very politely. "Help us pass through the Stargate?" Charlotte Linlin bent down, looking down at these little people with a curious look. At this moment, that Kaido laughed. "Wuro, Linlin, you don't know, that Stargate is only 3 meters high and 2 meters wide. With our body size, we can't enter. So it requires this woman to use her ability to shrink us. That's how I entered back then too." "I see." Chapter 281, The Marine Sakachi no Makami. Kaido watched a Charlotte Linlin, shrunk significantly, walked into the Stargate, but he didn't follow her in. Instead, he turned and left the base, then transformed into his azure dragon form again and flew towards the high altitude. He had said before that he had something to do on this trip, which was to go see his daughter, Yamato. Woo, but just as Kaido arrived near the high altitude above Manafort, he was speechless to see that the island had already sounded a sharp alarm sound, and the dozens of coastal defense cannons adjusted their angles to aim at him. At the same time, a large number of Marine officers wearing white justice coats flew up like a flock of white pigeons. Suddenly, the atmosphere became awkward. However, the alarm sound was turned off not long after, but the coastal defense cannons showed no intention of lowering their gun barrels, clearly still maintaining a high degree of vigilance towards that azure dragon. "Kaido, what are you here for?" Just then, Fleet Admiral Sengoku flew over, transforming into a white afterimage. His serious expression looked naturally imposing. "Of course I'm here to see my daughter." Hearing Kaido's words, Sengoku was startled and immediately realized it was true. This left him with no choice but to order the surrounding officers to disperse. He then said, "Let's go, I'll take you." There was nothing he could do. The Marine headquarters now only had him as an admiral-level combat power capable of keeping the other party in check. After all, it was impossible to let Kaido move freely within the Marine headquarters. Even though he had accepted recruitment, he was still not a Marine in the end. The two walked one after another on the street of Manafort. Along the way, Marines of various ranks looked at Kaido with strange gazes. Who would have thought that a pirate who previously had such a high bounty could walk so openly within the Marine headquarters? They didn't know why this was happening. There was nothing they could do. Currently, only commander above the rank of Vice Admiral knew about the Stargate and the other world. They hadn't publicly announced it to the whole army yet, as that would be equivalent to announcing it to the entire world. For Kaido himself, this kind of experience was also very novel, which made him look around at the various buildings with great interest. The island of Manafort was actually quite large, no less than a modern metropolis, far from the small area depicted in the anime. Furthermore, according to military regulations, flying was prohibited here under normal circumstances. This meant that no matter whether it was an ability user with flying ability or someone who could use moonwalk from the Navy 6 styles, no form of flying was allowed. Even a Marine admiral had to walk step by step from the port, across the plaza, and then into the various zone behind after disembarking from a warship. The intention was to make people feel awe towards the Marine headquarters. So Sengoku walked a long distance with Kaido. Fortunately, both of them had long legs and walked very fast, so they reached the gate of the female soldier barracks before long. "Fleet Admiral?" The two female Marines standing guard by the gate looked over in confusion. "This is Yamato's father, Kaido. He is here to see his daughter. Ask Vice Admiral Samantha whether to let Kaido in or bring Yamato out." Sengoku said calmly with his hands in his pocket, a docile seagull perched on his Marine hat. Only his beard, braided into pigtails on his chin, looked a bit amusing. "Yes." The female Marine quickly took out a transponder snail to relay the message. Not long after, Vice Admiral Samantha was seen walking out, holding the little Yamato. "Father." As soon as Yamato saw Kaido's face, she showed the most brilliant smile. This also brought a hint of fatherly tenderness to Kaido's eyes, although his expression was still somewhat stiff. "Can you find us a quiet room? I want to talk to my daughter alone for a bit," Kaido said to Sengoku after picking up Yamato, who had run over. Sengoku didn't speak, his gaze turned towards Vice Admiral Samantha. The latter understood tacitly and nodded, pointing to the small room next to the gate. She smiled and said, "How about there?" That was the place provided for the guards to rest. "All right." Kaido wasn't picky. He immediately strode over with his daughter in his arms, leaving Sengoku and the others standing there watching their backs. "So this is Kaido, the one called the strongest creature in recent years? He seems like a good father," Vice Admiral Samantha teased. "He's still just a pirate after all." Sengoku replied lightly, unconcerned. Thud, Kaido walked into the small room and conveniently closed the door. He didn't specifically pull the small curtain, but first gently placed Yamato on the ground, then squatted down. However, His 7-meter height still made him look especially tall even when squatting. Fortunately, Yamato was already used to tilting her neck up to look at her father. "Father, will I live here from now on?" Yamato's small, milky voice was very pleasant to the ear. Kaido nodded and asked softly. "Yes. How have you been recently? Has anyone bullied you?" "No, Aunt Rouge, Aunt Samantha, and the others are all very good to me." "Oh, right, and Grandma Tsuru, and little brother Ace are also very cute." Yamato stood there prettily and laughed sweetly. Her silver hair and the red horns on her head were simply incomparably cute. "That's good. From now on, you won't just live here, you'll also go to school here, and most likely become a Marines. When that time comes, you must study seriously and train hard. Remember, in this world, only your own strength is the most reliable. And you must also remember you're on a race identity." Yamato didn't know why her father suddenly became so serious, but she still obediently nodded and replied seriously. "I remember. Come, eat this." At this moment, Kaido took out an orange-red, large persimmon-shaped devil fruit from somewhere. He had found this when he was still ruling Wano country. He had originally planned to wait until his little daughter grew up and then take it out when she became the general of Wano country, but now all his plans were completely disrupted. So he decided to let Yamato eat this zone mythical beast type, wolf fruit model, Akachi no Makami form devil fruit in advance. This would not only enhance Yamato's aptitude in all aspects but also earn her more attention and training from the Marines. This way, even if something happened to him someday, he wouldn't have to worry about her having a difficult life. Honestly. Just talking about being a parent, Kaido's appearance of worrying so much for his daughter is much stronger than Garp, Dragon, and Charlotte Linlin. He can completely compete with Edward Newgate for the epithet of best old father. It looks delicious. Yamato shyly took it. Under Kaido's gaze, she carefully took a small bite of the fruit flesh. But as soon as it entered her mouth, her taste buds immediately protested severely. "Ugh, it tastes awful. Swallow it." But the tenderness on Kaido's face was long gone, replaced only by sternness like dark clouds. Yamato was startled by the shout and subconsciously swallowed the fruit flesh. Eat it all. Kaido actually knew that a devil fruit only needed one bite, but he just wanted Yamato to have a very deep impression of her ability. "Ah, father, this thing is bigger than my stomach, I can't eat it all." Yamato's eyes welled up with tears from being wronged, but Kaido didn't soften his heart at all. "You're an UNA race member, you can definitely finish it. Eat." Having no choice, Yamato could only eat the devil fruit bite by bite, with tears dripping and forcing herself. The whole process was very difficult, she almost gagged the entire time before finally managing to finish it. "Woo, father, I finished eating." Kaido looked at his little daughter sobbing while looking at him and speaking in a low voice. He actually felt very pained as well. "Now close your eyes and feel your body." "Okay." The current Yamato was really very obedient. It shows how deeply she was poisoned by Kazuki Oden's diary in the canon. He saw her slowly close her eyes, which were already soaked with tears. Soon, the little girl's body began to change. Her silver hair rapidly grew, her ears became longer and pointed, and white fur grew strand by strand on her forearms and calves. This was beast human form. Kaido understood in his heart. When he saw wisps of white mist like cold air emitting from beside Yamato, a clear smile finally appeared on his face. That's right. Chapter 282, Big Mom's Journey to Another World. Swish, welcome, Ms. Charlotte Linlin, to the Kabanrai world. I am the base commander here, Senior Director Addison, recipient of the West Third Class Medal. Senior Director Addison, dressed in a suit, wore a gentle smile as he watched the tall, mature woman emerge from the biochemical safety station. Standing behind him were several army officers and Cypher Paul Man in black. It's worth noting that because the Stargate's height is 3 meters, Charlotte Linlin's height is currently only 3 meters, making her look somewhat more normal. Mama, so this is another world? Charlotte Linlin felt like the exciting process she had imagined was missing, but she still looked around at the base environment with a face full of curiosity. This is inside the base. Senior Director Addison explained. Since the entire base was built into a fortress, people arriving here could no longer see the original dirt roads and exposed sky at first glance, but instead a stretch of cold stone buildings, floors, and metal ceilings. Alright, I want to see the Great Sea here first. Quickly lead Mama the way. Charlotte Linlin was a bit disappointed, but immediately urged them. No problem. Senior Director Addison nodded, then raised his hand to beckon the 2 men in black behind him forward. They are member of Cypher Pal 7. They will be responsible for guiding you from now on and handling any small troubles. If you need anything, you can also contact the base through them. I am Poulin. Please take care of me. I am Belloc. Please take care of me." The two men, dressed in formal attire and carrying strange backpacks, politely introduced themselves. However, the latter clearly had no interest in them. Instead, she was more curious about this short perspective experience, as if everyone she looked at was much larger. Senior Director Addison and the others accompanied Charlotte Linland to the fortress gate. Only after the latter had completely left the fortress did they disperse to attend to their own matter. Although this woman was a 4 emperors with the highest combat power. But since she had accepted recruitment, there was no need for excessive fear or apprehension. The main reason was that not many people knew about the matter of her soon being granted the admiral rank. Zeus. Charlotte Linland naturally had no intention of traveling on foot. She directly called out the thundercloud from within her body, then jumped onto it. The feeling under her feet was like solid cotton. Wow, so light. Zeus felt the weight on its body suddenly lighten, which filled its heart with great surprise. It thought to itself, "Mama didn't just get smaller, her body also got lighter. How are you two going to keep up with me?" Charlotte Linland didn't know what the thundercloud under her feet was thinking. She looked at the two Cypher Pulse 7 agent member and joked. "Naturally, we won't trouble you," Poulin said, then exchanged a glance with Belak. The next moment, the body of the two began to change at a speed visible to the naked eye. One's eyes turned into compound eyes made of countless small eyes, and transparent wings grew from his back. The other's arms turned into black influence, and his feet resembled bird claws. Then they took to the sky one after another. Poulin said, "I am an animal system bug fruit dragonfly form ability user." Belak said, "I am an animal system bird fruit swallow form ability user." Charlotte Linland was speechless for a moment. At the same time, she realized they had come prepared. She then followed the insect and bird towards the coast of Ojaka Peninsula. Upon arriving, she looked at the Great Sea, which was incredibly docile compared to the New World Sea area, and asked doubtfully, "How can I be sure this seawater won't affect ability users?" Although Kaido and these people said it was fine, having been a non-swimmer for so many years, she still didn't dare to easily trust other words, much less jump straight in. She wasn't that stupid. To provide bathing services for swimmers after they come ashore, a large bathhouse has been specially construction over there. "You can try taking a bath there first," Poulin said softly. The bathhouse's original construction was because of Tsuru. Before she left, she had suggested to Senior Director Addison that she might come swimming often but would need a convenient place to wash up. "Is that so? That's great. Quickly take Mama there." Charlotte Linland was naturally overjoyed. Soon, a great beauty in a swimsuit appeared in the relatively simple bathhouse, then stepped into the steaming pool. Wow! As she submerged her entire body in the hot water, she immediately let out a happy groan. Surely no one in this world dislikes taking a hot bath, right? Mama, there's really no feeling at all. The recovered Charlotte Linland checked the situation of her body. Soon, she was surprised to find no discomfort whatsoever. One must know that in the Planet Sea world, due to the widespread presence of the pyrobroin substance, even in so-called freshwater, such as river and hot spring, as long as the majority of an ability user's body is not in the water, they will still feel a relatively obvious feeling of weakness. This discovery made her stand up from the pool, run straight out of the large bathhouse, and step by step walk into the seawater under the surprised gaze of the two large men. To be honest, her full, slender body, full of alluring curves, was indeed quite attractive. Charlotte Linland, before she became completely obese, was a fully ripe, beautiful mature woman. It's real, it's real. The Great Sea here can be swum in. Charlotte Linland, in the Great Sea, became excited. She now completely believed that this was another world, and not just being teleported to some small island on Planet Sea by that Stargate. They said there's more than one Stargate, and a second one will open before long, so there really is something called the Multiverse. At this moment, the first thing that came to her mind was naturally the desserts and delicious food from other worlds, which caused her emotions to surge dramatically. Candy. 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 I want to eat candy. Give me candy. Unconsciously, her pupil turned wavy, and her eyes even glowed with a blood red aura, an aura that could truly be seen with the naked eye. Not good. Poulin and Belak's expression changed drastically. Both entered their half-beast form, flapping their respective influence and pinions to fly over. At the same time, one of them quickly brought the backpack from behind to the front and rapidly pulled open the zipper on it. Big Mom. Open your mouth. Charlotte Linland, who had fallen into craving sickness, heard the shout. Raising her head with a fury of endless appetite, she roared. Give me candy. For her now, even people would turn into the food she wanted to eat in her eyes. Just at this time, Belak poured out the contents of his backpack. Immediately, colorful candy appeared in midair, one by one. Candy. Charlotte Linland stomped the seawater beneath her feet, blasting upwards like a rocket. Completely disregarding the wrappers on the candy, she swallowed all the rapidly falling candy like a hungry wolf. Ugh! As the candy in her stomach were rapidly digested under the corrosion of stomach acid resembling sulfuric acid, she gradually regained consciousness, satisfied. Her pupil also returned to normal. Phew! Poulin and Bellick breathed a sigh of relief seeing this scene. Fortunately, they had long been prepared for Charlotte Linland's craving sickness. Each of those candy had extremely high sweetness, belonging to the top products of a major sugar-producing country. Actually, craving sickness is far from this simple. This time, she just happened to want to eat candy, but if she had wanted to eat cake, it would have been useless. So, it was quite fortunate. Nevertheless, the final outcome was safe. After experiencing swimming in the sea, Charlotte Linland wanted to see the scenery and local specialty of this other world. What is a local specialty? Kabanrai world. However, wild Kabanrai world are basically no longer seen within Hinamoto. It was also inconvenient to take her to a factory, so they could only go overseas. After Poulin and the other reported to the base, they decided to take Charlotte Linland on a trip to the Asia continent across the sea. With their flight speed, it wouldn't take long to go back and forth. However, it was also their first time going there. Fortunately, they just had to follow the map, and they also had transponders nailed to contact Konigakaku. This shogunate capital was still adorned with tiles as before, looking very much like Eastern-style buildings. However, it had become much livelier than before. The biggest change was that outside the high wall, large amounts of farmland had been cultivated. Many men and women with bare thighs were working hard in them, but everyone's face carried a satisfied smile. For these poor common people at the bottom, they didn't care how many minerals were taken or if the general had become a puppet. They only knew that they no longer had to fear the sudden appearance of Kabanrai world, nor worry about food becoming scarce and unobtainable even with money. Such a safe life with enough food and warmth was simply the best paradise. On the street inside the city, there were also men, women, old and young walking everywhere. Many child ran past in groups, laughing, holding snack bought by Lord. That. What is that? Suddenly, a startled cry rang out on the street, attracting the attention of the surrounding people. Everyone looked in the direction the person was pointing. Indeed. They saw 3 flying figures appear in the sky above. One was a black bird man and one was a green dragonfly man. The tall, sexiness woman in the middle was the most miraculous. She was actually standing on a white cloud, with a small sun floating beside her. God. The great God from the divine realm has descended again. It was unclear who started it, but all the citizens who saw this scene knelt down with a rustle, shouting Kami-sama in their mouths. Mama, what are they doing? Charlotte Linland also noticed the spectacular scene of the entire fortress kneeling below, which piqued her curiosity. The people of this world have never seen devil fruit ability users, but they have deeply ingrained myth and legends. Therefore, they regard us as divine person from the divine realm and devil fruit ability users as deity. It seems they have mistaken you for some deity. Bellick, who had manifestation a black swallow, explained. Following him, Poulin, the listener, said with a light chuckle. Interestingly, in their myth, the deity reside in a divine realm called Dakamagahara, which is an island floating on the sea and in the clouds. This is very similar to the Sky Island on our side. Charlotte Linland immediately lost interest after hearing this. She truly felt nothing towards these ignorant other-world citizens. The key was that their aura were also weak, not even comparable to slightly older child. This reminded her of a word. Bugs. Let's go, let's go. I hope those Kabanrai world are a bit more interesting. Chapter 283, The Second Stargate and Inma appear. Just as Charlotte Linland was having a blast in the Kabanrai world, the gears of the world government on the home sea star side also began to speed up. Lord Imu, the biochemical safety station at the number 0002 Stargate base has been completed. On the top floor of Noah's Ark, a golden Dendenmashi respectfully reported to him. Im naturally understood its meaning upon hearing this. Send over the real-time screen feed of the Stargate's location. Yes. In the room of authority within Pangaea Castle, St. Topman Warcurry's mustache twitched with excitement, and the other 4 around him were also pounding with excitement. They were about to make contact with the second other world. Immediately notify Spencer. After Im hung up the call first, St. Topman Warcurry directly issued an order to Chief of Staff Alexander Watson, who was standing in the distance. Understood, Lord. Soon, after being relayed through various levels, the order finally reached Base Chief Spencer. He didn't hesitate either and immediately arranged for his subordinates to take a visual Dendenmashi into the biochemical safety station. It could be said that the entire outer facility of the Stargate base was built around it, and the Stargate itself was the core of the biochemical safety station. Now, the core was about to be put in place. Back in the room of authority, The five elders continued their discussion. Have the first batch of exploration personnel been confirmed? They've been decided. The main force is still the previous Cypher Pol 9 agent squad. Due to the height issue raised by Lucci, this time we will dispatch some personnel around 1.8 meters or shorter, but Lucci will still personally lead the team. Saint Shepherd Jupiter appeared very composed. What about the Biochemical Research Institute? Saint Topman Warcurry continued to ask, as they were actually the first department to enter the other world. After all, no one knew what the air on the other side was like. No problem. The researchers who guided the construction guidance department in building the biochemical safety station are still there. We can have them take the detection equipment directly inside. St. Marcus Mars replied. Good. What about the army? Who will be the frontline commander this time? St. Topman Warcurry looked at St. Jaga Ursha Saturn. Just like Douglas Barrett was responsible for the frontline command in the Kubenrai world, a vice admiral would definitely need to be assigned to this second world. As for admirals, they were the highest combat power stationed in the rear and would not be directly dispatched unless there were special circumstances. After several months of special training, Crocodile's hockey has recovered to normal levels, and he has also mastered the basics of the 6 powers. Let him do it. Hearing St. Jaga Ursha Saturn's decision, St. Topman Warcurry asked in confusion. Another pirate origin? This old man remembers that the Marines transferred several vice admirals over a while ago, didn't they? In his opinion, people with pure backgrounds were more trustworthy. Value. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn, however, had a different view and calmly replied. Crocodile's potential is many times higher than those vice admirals, and he is very skilled at scheme. This old man believes that cultivating him will yield higher returns. As for loyalty and trust, in his opinion, there was no need to worry. The influence of the world government was enough to suppress this sand crocodile, and wasn't Lord Imu also present? Alright. St. Topman Warcurry didn't say much more. After all, the military was not under his jurisdiction. He then sighed with emotion. I hope this world will also be smooth sailing. I disagree with that point. The previous Kubenrai world was too boring. I hope to encounter a more lively world. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn said with a cheerful laugh. He had been in a particularly good mood recently because he already knew that Lord Imu was preparing to hand over several talent from the Charlotte family to the Ministry of Police Affairs. This meant that his judiciary would soon gain several high-level combat power members. Over at Noah's Arkansas, has it arrived? Im was currently in his bedroom, a 500-square-meter room. After all, the secret of controlling the Stargate was involved, so it naturally couldn't be done in front of Stussy and the others. At this moment, as the visual Denden Mushy's eyes projected light and shadow, a live broadcast screen feed appeared in midair. It was an empty space surrounded by white metal walls. Without hesitation, he directly brought up his cheat star chart and chose to place the second Stargate in the middle of that empty space. Activate. The next moment, a cluster of faint blue starlight began to appear on the screen, then expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye, quickly turning into a slowly rotating Milky Way star cluster. So beautiful. Senior Director Spencer, who was on site, gazed mesmerized at the dreamlike scene before him until the star cluster transformed into a square Stargate 3 meters high and 2 meters wide. Another natural planet. When the Stargate, like a transparent window, displayed the scene of the world on the other side before everyone, both him and the 5 elders were delighted. Because the screen feed within the gate was a lush, green forest. The rest will be handled by the newly formed Otherworld Strategy Committee. I wonder which world this is. Im thought to himself as he examined the Stargate in the projection. However, the entire process from merit testing to exploration personnel gathering intelligence would definitely take some time, and the Stargate base here on the homeland side hadn't even been completed yet, let alone the Stargate base on the other end. Pu-upper-upperu. At this moment, another ordinary transponder snail rang. Im picked up the handset and heard the transponder snail softly say, Lord Saint Nerona, the flying warship sent by Saint Mihawk has arrived. They said they brought your 5 go. The person speaking was Stussy. She had practically become his secretary now. Send them over. Yes. Im stood up with some anticipation. He was about to see the real-life figures, and then quickly walked out of the ridiculously large bedroom to the larger main hall. Lord. As soon as he approached, 9 white-clothed female warriors with long bows on their backs in the hall knelt on one knee. Rise. Im first sat on the throne on the platform, then casually waved his hand. The female warriors rose again upon receiving the order and continued to stand on either side, looking straight ahead. They were the personal royal guard chosen from Amazon Lily according to his requirements. Each one was under 2 meters tall, with graceful figures, slender waists, fair skin, alluring red lips, eyes shining like cold stars, and an heroic aura that was pleasing to the eye. Overall, Their appearances were quite passable. However, he had directly changed their original bikini-style attire. Now they wore form-fitting silver armor that accentuated their curves, paired with a white cloak. Even their bows and arrows were replaced with the best silver bows and white arrows, though the arrow shafts had patterns resembling blood vessels with vibrant aura. Soon, led by Stussy, 4 maids carrying sword stands walked in. On the sword stands were one of the 21 great grade swords, Hidden Rain Village no Habakiri, said to be able to cut down the heavens, Inma, which can conquer even hell, the personal sword of the late sword god Shimatsuki Ruma, the cursed blade Shuzui that once cut down Arlong, and the Foxfire twin swords, one of the 50 skillful grade blades. Imsaki instantly sensed the different auras on these blades. In his perception, the first blade emitted white light, the second emitted purple light, the third emitted black light, and Foxfire emitted a relatively faint aura. Send Inma over. He was most interested in this blade, because Zoro being able to see Inma likely had something to do with this Inma. The key was the aura on it, which actually made him feel a trace of unease. Below the platform. Upon hearing the order, Stussy took the Inma's sword stand and personally brought it before him. The latter didn't stand up and directly grasped the scabbard. Swish, instantly, he drew the blade out, but immediately an untamed will emanated from the blade. A cluster of dark purple halo appeared, and it even tried to spread onto his arm, causing a hint of contempt to show in Im's eyes. Ridiculous. Buzz, as he slightly released some of his hockey strength, this Inma seemed to be startled, and all the purple light froze in place. Just then, Im narrowed his eyes, and alarm bells rang loudly in his heart, because he found that the surrounding environment had changed. Stussy and the Kuja guards had all disappeared. The entire main hall had turned into a barren and dark land filled with light purple mist. Immediately after, a tall figure emerged from the mist ahead. A figure completely hidden within a purple cloak, with a pale skull deep within the hood, holding a large black scythe in its hand. Inma? The golden ripple eyes in Im's pupils suddenly trembled. Chapter 284, The Cooperation of Two Kings. Not only did the court change, but feelings like temperature, smell, and so on also changed. Strangely, the throne beneath him and the Inma in his hand did not disappear. But Im wouldn't pay attention to these minor details. He was fully focused, guarding against the mysterious existence that appeared before him. King of the human world, we finally meet. This purple-robed skeleton clearly had no expression, but its voice came from its body. The voice was very deep and resonant, like a bell, and a faint echo could even be heard. You know me? Im held the blade, sitting upright on the throne, and asked with a blank expression. At the same time, his brain was operating at high speed. Of course. For long-lived beings like you, it naturally attracts this king's attention. After all, it's quite rare. So, besides me, are there other long-lived beings? Seeing that King Yama seemed to have no malice, Im's tone softened slightly. However, he still wondered what this great god wanted with him. Yes, for example. A father and daughter who rely on external objects for longevity. However, you are the same. Although the method is different, it is all false longevity. Hearing this, Im frowned. Wasn't longevity just longevity? Was there a difference between false and true? What matter do you want with me? This king has come to discuss cooperation with you. This left him stunned. What could he and the other party possibly cooperate on? What could the king of the living and the king of the dead cooperate on? Tell me about it. Regardless, Im still had to listen. The strong sense of crisis from his sixth sense allowed him to determine that the opponent was much, much stronger than him. Even so, it was impossible for him to humble himself and be overly respectful. This king doesn't know how you open the gate to other worlds, but this king also wants to conquer other underworlds. This requires your help. King Yama's tone gradually rose. Im could hear the expectation and excitement in his words, and he also relaxed considerably after learning the other party's purpose. But wasn't this king of hell's attitude too good? He was even willing to negotiate? Was this its true nature, or was it forced to be this way? Im's thoughts raced, but on the surface, he remained calm, asking. How can I help? Bring some other worlders to Wano country for execution. This way, their souls can be pulled in by this king. This king can then use their soul aura to pinpoint the location of their native underworld within the soul domain, and then travel there on an underworld boat along the underworld river. This passage had a huge information volume and many key points. After Im quickly digested this content, he began to ask questions one by one. Why must they be brought to Wano country? Don't all the souls on our planet C belong to you? Of course, they all belong to this king. No matter where living beings like you die, their souls will drift here. But the souls of other worlders are different. If they die elsewhere, their souls either return to their native underworld or dissipate on the spot. And Wano country, especially the flower capital, is the closest place to this king's underworld. There, this king can easily intercept their souls. This King Yama seemed very patient, explaining the reasons to him in detail. At the same time, he also revealed more new information. Asked again. You said pull them in here. Where is here, and why am I here? This is Yami Hirazaka. It is the first stop for undead from the human world arriving at this king's underworld. There is nothing here except a black dead land. As for how you got here, you've already realized it, haven't you? That blade sent your soul here. Of course, this also required this king's consent. Hearing this, raised the inma in his hand and thought to himself. Good grief, is this the Planet C version of Tensei Iga? Is that all? I just need to have a few otherworlders executed in Wano country? You can kill more. Whether they are otherworlders or homeland, they can provide this king with more ghost soldiers and generals. That Roger who came a while ago was very good. Was startled, frowned, and asked. Has Goldie Roger become your subordinate? Of course. Not just him. As long as they were powerhouses during their lives, they have a chance to become this king's subordinates upon reaching the underworld. But this king only keeps the best. Most of the admirals from your world government over the past few hundred years are basically in this king's underworld. King Yama's mood seemed to become very pleasant. He greatly appreciated the world government. Because the strength of an underworld's influence is inextricably linked to the strength of the living beings in the human world connected to it. And the world government, which can systematically cultivate powerhouses. It was simply the best source of soldiers and generals, so he also had a good impression of him. When you die someday, this king will save a good position for you. Hearing such kind words, was speechless for a moment, but quickly composed himself, asking again. So I am currently in soul body form? Correct. That blade can only transport souls. Can the physical body come in? No. Then what's with this throne and platform? That was prepared by this king for you. If you don't like it, it can be removed. The next moment, Im's expression changed, and he instantly stood up, as the throne and platform beneath him began to dissipate with the wind, turning into a patch of purple sand and disappearing without a trace. Fortunately, he could maintain his mindset, and standing up was indeed better for action. Straightened his body, calmly looked at the opponent's whole skeleton eyes, and said, I can cooperate with you, but since it's cooperation, I should also gain something, right? What do you want? I want to know how to break through the hockey limit. Don't look at him as someone who just thinks about playing all day, he actually worries about his strength. But his previous body had proven over hundreds of years that no matter how he trained, there would be no change. This was the despair of hitting the ceiling. But as a transmigrator, coupled with the appearance of the Stargate, he knew deeply that his current strength was far from the peak of power. There must be a way to improve. Hockey originates from the heart, and the heart originates from the soul. Your heart has reached the upper limit of what your soul can bear, so increasing soul's strength will suffice. For King Yama, this question was hardly a problem. Then I want the cultivation method to increase soul's strength. Said immediately without any hesitation. There isn't any. But King Yama could not satisfy his request. Although this king has heard that such soul cultivation secret methods exist in other worlds, this king does not have them here. Of course, they could be researched, but that would take a certain amount of time, which is too long for you humans. What about soul-type devil fruits? Thought of Charlotte Linland's soul fruit and Brooks' yummy fruit. Those things do have a good strengthening effect on the soul. King Yama gave a direct answer. Receiving confirmation, kept this matter in mind, while thinking to himself. Soul cultivation secret methods from other worlds. Could it be from Siriite AI? Just then, King Yama proactively said. This king cannot give you a soul cultivation secret method, but can allow you to freely enter and exit Hull with this blade to hunt those evil spirits. Through this method, your soul will actually also obtain training, though the efficiency is very low. It can be done like this. Was very pleasantly surprised. So that was it. Those soul cultivation secret methods were just advanced cultivation methods. Even without them, one could still improve through hard work. However, you must be careful. Once you die here, your physical body in the human world will also die. At that time, you will have to become this king's subordinate. How do I distinguish if something is an evil spirit? Also, doesn't doing this disrupt the order of hell? Always felt it was safer to ask for details about such matters. He continued to ask. Also, what level is my strength considered here? Those who actively attack you or other departed souls are evil spirits. Evil spirits are also targets we need to eliminate. As for your strength, this King Yama seemed to be sizing him up, and also seemed a bit hesitant. Of course, all of this might just be Im's feeling. A weakling among the sixth sense level, but much stronger than those admirals when they first arrived. so you'd best be careful here. If you encounter danger, it's best to control the blade and return directly to your physical body. How do I control it? Im also felt that learning how to escape was the top priority. Imagine you are putting the blade back into its scabbard. Hearing King Yama's words, Im immediately began to experiment. Imagining a clear screen feed was not difficult for him at all. In reality, Stussy looked with a puzzled expression at him, who had just drawn the blade and then closed his eyes without speaking. After a few minutes, he put the blade back into the scabbard, and then instantly opened his sharp eyes. Buzz, a powerful hockey aura surged out from him like a tide, but was instantly retracted by him. Despite this, Stussy, who was closest, rolled her eyes and fell to the ground with a thud. Although the Kuja attendants on both sides didn't faint, their expressions were pale, sweat beaded on their foreheads, and their bodies trembled slightly like willow branches. Don't forget our cooperation, king of the human world. However, Im had no intention of being gentle or considerate. His gaze didn't even glance at Stussy. Instead, his gaze was deep as he lowered his head to look at the inma in his hand, recalling the lingering voice in his ears. Interesting, truly interesting, the underworld. Everything that just happened was too magical, enough to be shocking, and he gained a lot. He also learned that the true power of this blade lies in soul cutting, which means it has a restraining effect on soul bodies. However, he was now more concerned about King Yama's evaluation of his strength. Sixth sense? Weakling? So even the highest combat power outside were just weaklings among the sixth sense level. What were powerhouses like then? What is above the sixth sense? Perhaps, Im already had the answer in his heart. However, with the cooperation reached between the two kings of the two worlds, it was also confirmed that Planet C's in Mahel was about to launch its multiverse conquest journey, except they would be stirring up waves in the soul domain. Chapter 285, Personnel enter the second Stargate. Boom. 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 The next day, exactly at 1 in the afternoon. In areas such as Holy Land Mary Ejos in the RL0000 district, World Government Headquarters in the RL0001 area, Cypherpol Headquarters in the RL1999 area, and Celestial Dragon Holy Palace Academy in the RL0003 district, the Celestial Dragons, government officials, Holy Land Garrison, and men in black were all startled by a series of thunderous sounds in the sky. Is it leaving? In a manner in the land of the gods, a middle-aged celestial dragon looked in surprise at the trembling Noah's Ark, then burst into laughter. That's great. I've been annoyed by it for a long time. How long has it been blocking our sunlight? This giant ship, large enough to cover 4 districts, truly blocked out the sky and sun. Especially in Holy Land Mary Ejos, not a single ray of sunlight could be seen. As soon as the sky got slightly darker, they had to turn on the lights for illumination. Although everyone was still curious about who this giant ship was prepared for, after living with it for so long, they cared more about their own lives. Anyway, no one had invited them aboard. At the same time, the high-pressure steam jet ports at the ship bottom and sides of the Noah's Ark were activated. The ship's hull, significantly larger than a city, began to slowly fly towards the new world under the gaze of countless people below. Speed up the progress. The people who need to be dealt with, the matters that need to be settled, and the countries that need to be conquered should be resolved as quickly as possible. I need to become stronger. Im stood at the edge of the topmost level, his hands clasped behind his back, calmly gazing at the vast, boundless blue sky. Because Dragon had added a wind wall to the Noah's Ark, the astral wind at high altitude didn't affect the interior at all. Yesterday's plight had created a strong sense of crisis, urgency, and hope for continued growth in his heart. As mentioned before, since former Imu had proven over several hundred years that strength could no longer be improved through training alone, he hadn't continued training after inheriting the complete strength. It wasn't that he was slacking off, he just felt he had reached the limit. But now King Yama told him that by entering hell through Inma, he could increase his soul's strength through combat with evil spirits. If soul's strength increased, the upper limit of the heart would naturally rise, and the final result would be Haki breaking through its current limit. Furthermore, this would also enhance the level of the sixth sense. According to King Yama, the most direct manifestation would be the awakening of more supernatural ability. Speaking of supernatural ability, Haki is actually one of them. The one with the most functions is Observation Haki, as it possesses various special abilities. Saint Seiya, huh? It's a familiar world, but why can't I feel happy about it? Im let out a bitter smile in his heart. Mainly because, based on King Yama's description of the sixth sense, the Saint Seiya he might encounter would likely be based on the manga version's power level, not the anime's. The Bronze Saint's supersonic fist wasn't too bad, it wasn't particularly impressive to the powerhouses of Planet C. But attacks capable of shattering atoms were somewhat terrifying. He wondered what level of armament hockey could withstand them. As for the Silver Saint, there was even less to say. A casual punch could split a 10,000-meter Great Sea, revealing the seabed and so on. Just as M was filled with worry. The only 3-meter-tall Charlotte Linlin walked out of the Kabinari Stargate base with a look of satisfaction. She raised her hands and examined herself, then looked at Senior Director O'Connor, who had came to greet her. How do I change back? Although this miniaturized experience was quite novel and didn't affect her strength, the novelty had long since worn off. Please wait a moment. Senior Director O'Connor said politely, then took out a transponder snail and communicated briefly with Stussy on the Noah's Arkansas soon. Before the call even ended, as the latter cancelled the mini fruit ability, Charlotte Linlin's body began to swell at a speed visible to the naked eye, instantly returning to her previous 8-meter body size. Mama, this ability is really good. After praising it, she called out to Zeus from within her body, stepped directly onto the listless anthropomorphic thundercloud, and flew towards Hurtado land. Charlotte Linlin had completely decided on affiliation with the world government. This time, upon returning, she would hold a tea party as requested to lure out the Sea Transport King. For no other reason than the delicious food and dessert of the multiverse, and to see all sorts of strange races. If she liked any, she would find a way to get a few to play with. Meanwhile, she had come out of the Stargate, but near the number 0002 Stargate in the adjacent zone, some people were preparing to go in and take a look. They were all wearing thick hazmat suits and carrying various miniaturized equipment. They were researchers from the Biochemical Research Institute and Cypher Pol 6 agent guards responsible for security. Their upcoming mission was to check the air composition of the new world. This process was also being broadcast in real time by surveillance Den Mushi to the Room of Authority, Otherworld Strategy Committee Headquarters, World Government Headquarters, Cypher Pol Headquarters, Army Headquarters, Marine Headquarters, and other major departments. Since the Supreme Political Conference concluded, these processes needed to be shown to all higher-ups and middle management. The specific command was handled by Chairman Fernandez of the Otherworld Strategy Committee and the other 4 vice-chairmen. Soon, under the gaze of all the big shots, this team of researchers began to walk into the Stargate in single file. 2 of them were pulling a thick, long black line, which was used to connect the transponder snail. After the experience of conquering the Kabinari world, the world government had made more thorough preparations. On the other side of the Stargate, as soon as the researchers walked in, the chirping of birds immediately entered their ears. They first subconsciously scanned up, down, left, and right. They couldn't see the sky because their heads were covered by dense leaves. Only scattered gaps allowed rays of sunlight to filter through. The first impression was being in a forest. Perimeter. At this moment, a Cypher Pol 6 agent member roughly issued the command. He himself quickly walked in one direction. In an instant, they formed a perimeter line extending 100 meters distance from the Stargate as the center. Let's begin too. Seeing this, the researcher team leader also started working with his team members to test the air composition here. On the other side, someone had already connected the black line to a visual Den Mushi, sending the high-definition screen feedback to the home world. It will be difficult to establish a base in a place like this. St. Topman Warcurry frowned. Indeed. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn agreed with this point. In such a densely forested environment, establishing defense facilities would require clearing the surrounding area. But with no understanding of the new world, it was impossible to directly send an engineering team for construction. Air composition is normal. No harmful substance or unknown substance found. Oxygen content is almost identical to the Kabinari world. Human experimentation can be attempted. At this point, the visual Den Mushi reported very seriously. Permission granted. Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel of the Otherworld Strategy Committee agreed to the researcher captain's suggestion via the transponder snail. Chairman Fernandez, sitting at the main seat of the meeting table nearby, suddenly spoke. Another otherworld with an overly normal environment. I now suspect that most worlds we encounter in the future will be like this. That's a good thing, it saves us a lot of trouble. Kan Ming, sitting in the left seat, chuckled while holding his feather fan. His gaze was fixed on the projection screen, his eyes filled with anticipation and excitement. It wasn't just him, the higher-ups in the meeting rooms of various departments were all like this. Only Sengoku and the vice-admirals on either side at Marine Headquarters had bitter smiles on their faces. Because they could truly only watch. Chapter 286, The Descent of Noah's Ark. A small island, colorful and vibrant, with a diameter of about 20 kilometers, where large numbers of rainbow eucalyptus trees grew. Because their bark surface had various colors such as yellow, green, orange, and even purple, they visually presented a rainbow-like feeling. When dense rainbow eucalyptus trees gathered together, gently blown by the sea breeze, their branches and leaves swaying, It was like a large mass of colorful oil paint constantly changing. Its existence made the overall environment's style become abstract. It was on the shore of such a peculiar small island that an oversized blue whale was docked. It was actually a very large three-masted sailboat. Since the Whitebeard pirates left the Wano country waters, they had came to this island, which belonged to their territory, to rest for a few days. The crewmates were either stepping on wooden boards to move wine barrels, grain boxes, and other supplies up and down, or walking into the inland, on the island, in twos and threes to stroll around, chatting and laughing with the residents here, drinking alcohol and eating meat, a scene of harmony and joy.